Hey folks, welcome to the Thursday night live stream. I am your host, Davis Aurini, the man who warns you about the tumor before it erupts into giant pustules and who gets called a hater for doing so. But that's okay, that's what I'm good at, that is in my nature. And you know what, you were right, Luke. You're right, folks. I was going to try something. I was going to try doing a webcam in the corner, still have like Luke do all the visuals, but apparently this only shows up if you have multiple people. Now, actually, let me
You're more technically.
check what happens if I go into here. I'm going to just Hangout Toolbox, and I'm probably going to crash out my computer because it's thinking.
Oh yeah, double invite yourself.
Opening Hangout Toolbox. Sorry, folks. I actually put a shirt on, you know? Still opening Toolbox. Okay, forget it.
Or you could open up another browser and just mute your other self.
Well, maybe. Let's see if that works. Let's see if I go to another browser and I go to Hangouts here. Mute. Okay, I've read and understand the information. Oh, no, can't do it.
No.
No. All right, so just welcome to the great radio show where we do nothing but camera maintenance while we're supposed to be streaming. We're just going to forget the whole thing for tonight. Yeah, exactly. Whatever. But speaking of doing a bit of housekeeping, well, today people got charged for Patreon. My backers were charged for that. So thank you very much to all my Patreon backers for supporting the work I do. You are greatly appreciated. I should also mention that this is brought to you by akingscastle.com. You should go check out A King's Castle. Very good people that write it, friends of mine. And yeah, it's sort of like Return of Kings with more of a focus on the fatherhood aspect. And let's see. This show, actually, one last little bit of amusing news. So Luke, you found you got a Google alert. You're up on the kiwi farms, I hear.
Yes, I was actually in the process of making a Facebook page for Artistic Layman, and when I Googled my name, it turns out, just to find my connections, it turns out I have a Kiwi Farms page. With well, it's a year old, but Taisley is a person cataloging my internet presence up until a year ago.
Oh boy, let's see. I still have this. I can't believe they didn't call you Autistic Layman.
They did in the comments section.
Actually, let me see. Autistic. Oh yeah, they did. They did. I used to have a buddy that ran his own business called Artistic something. I'm not going to mention the business name, but like he would joke with the clients. It's like it was autistic.
Oh wait a minute! Apparently, it's been updated according to the comments.
Oh my goodness, they are.
Why do all these alt-right and anti-SJW YouTube guys always do minimalistic flash animations in their videos?
Because it's faster.
Yeah. He's an Aurini fanboy, judging by the pic he made.
Yeah, because you and I met and had pizza, you're clearly a fanboy. Yeah, never mind the fact that we do regular collaborations and these
Although,
people.
To be fair, I'm a little more saner than a fanboy, but you know, I was a fan. I am technically a fanboy initially. I mean, that's how I found you.
Just these people think that they are absolute geniuses for, oh my God, Aurini has a Facebook page. I'm elite hacksaw for finding it. So Kiwi Farms originally started out as a lalcow forum, mostly focusing on people like Chris Chan or other people like that. But the sad thing is they quickly devolved. A perfect example of you become that which you hate. And so at this point, they're just like, they are the epitome of basement dwelling, hater, fat anime otaku nerd. It's just sad. They just guys, this is why you don't hate. All right, don't let hate rule your soul, because you become worse than whomever you hate. But that said, all of that aside, so I'll tell you what's really on my mind lately is artificial intelligence. I'll tell you what, folks. I'm reading Gödel Escher Bach right now for pleasure, if you can call reading this book pleasure. I should have read it 15 years ago, back when I was still on top of my calculus and everything. And so now it's like pulling out an old piece of farm equipment that's been sitting in the shed for over a decade and spraying it with WD-40 every 5 minutes and rereading the same paragraph again and again until I figure out, oh, okay, yeah, a formal mathematical system. I know what that is. Just have to remind myself. It's got me thinking. I think these are topics worth covering. The difference between artificial intelligence and actual intelligence. Now, one of the biggest factors in artificial intelligence, one of the most interesting discoveries about mathematics and logic systems is the halting problem. Now, I linked down below to a video and animation explaining the halting problem in detail. But first, let's discuss what is a computer halting? What is a recursive loop? Now, I trust that all of you have a basic understanding of basic programming. Yes, that's the video right there. And I strongly recommend it. It does a great job illustrating everything. So basic programming, you just have lines. It's like a batch file, if you've ever written a batch file. You have lines of data, right? And typically you don't name them 1, 2, 3, 4. You name them 10, 20, 30, 40. That way, if you need to put a step in, you can put 35 in there. You have 9 spaces that you can, oops, I need to put something in there without rewriting your entire code. The most basic of data loops is line 10, go to 20, line 20, go to 10. And so when you execute this program, it scans down and it reads line 10. Oh, go to 20. Okay, it jumps to line 20, and 20 says go to 10. And it just bounces back and forth between 10 and 20 ad infinitum. That is a halted program. That is that's when it's a program that's never going to do anything. It will never complete. It will never output a result. Now, the thing about that, go to 10, go to 20, thing about that program is every single one of you can visualize why that program never goes anywhere. It's in an infinite loop bouncing between. You can all understand this. The computer can't, by the way. Unless if you program it to specifically look out for loops such as that one. But you've told it, the computer doesn't understand that it's a loop. All it knows is that it has a subroutine saying, look out for loops, this is a loop. Now there's another program in BASIC, and unfortunately I don't have it. I read this years ago. It's actually a 5-line BASIC program. And Cynic in Chief, he's in the comments. He's one of the writers over at King's Castle. He might know the one I'm talking about. It's 5 lines of BASIC. And anybody that's ever run this program has yet to achieve a result. Does it loop forever? Well, this 5-line program, we don't actually know. This 5-line program might actually eventually return a result. But we don't know. I think, and I might be about to put my foot in my mouth, folks. I might really embarrass myself. It might be a program looking for the biggest prime number. Now, maybe somebody has proven that there's infinite prime numbers, in which case I just put my foot in my mouth. But assuming we don't know if there's infinite prime numbers, there might be finite prime numbers. So if you run a program to look for the biggest prime number, it might take 50 years until it gets up to the last prime number. But nobody's ever run it for 50 years. So is this program hanging? Is it looping? Or is it running the way it's supposed to? The only way you can find out if a program is hanging is to wait. And if it eventually unhangs, if it eventually returns a result, it wasn't hanging. It wasn't looping. But if it keeps going forever, well, maybe tomorrow it'll stop looping. So this is the thing. You cannot know that a program is looping if you can't understand the program, if you can't visualize it in your head. So 10 go to 20, 20 go to 10. You can visualize that in your head. You can understand that it's looping. The other program, the 5-line program, it's only 5 lines of code. We can't understand that. So what actually happens? Anytime your window grays out and it says, would you like to terminate the process? What's actually happening is your computer has a counter. And if a certain program has not returned a result in a set amount of time, the computer says, chances are it's locked, because we know programs lock. Or even if it's not locked, it might take 20 minutes to return a result. It'd be easier just to restart the bloody thing. So this automated process asks the user if they'd like to cancel it. Because see, the computer can't make that determination. It is impossible to program that determination. And the whole point of the halting problem, which is that video I mentioned, is it is demonstrably a contradiction in logic to make such a program. Basically, the way the thought experiment goes is imagine a program that can figure out if a program is halted or looped, and the implications of such a program are a contradiction in terms. So it's impossible.
It's like, I mean, this is probably a bad analogy, but it's like it's like trying to say who's the creator of God. Like, but there is no creator of God.
Yeah. Now, what is artificial intelligence? Now, how do they program artificial intelligence? CPG Gray has a great video explaining, it's a very dumbed down version of it, but it's essentially, you have 2 ways of programming artificial intelligence. The first one, like if you're programming a video game from the late 90s, you will write a script for the characters. Actually, in the game Dragon Age Origin, you can write the artificial intelligence for each party member, right? You've got, like 30 lines of code and variables for each one, and you can come up with, it's essentially a basic program saying, if this is the situation, do this. If that is the situation, do that. So on and so on. Oh, and I'm sorry, it's CGP Gray, not CPG Gray. Although Google is smart enough that it'll find either one for you. So that's the one form of artificial intelligence where a human programs it. And you can do this if you have Dragon Age Origins. However, it's very, very limited doing something like that. It's going to take you absolutely... Anything particularly interesting is not going to be programmed that way. The other way you program something, and the example that CGP Gray is using, is visual recognition. So let's say you have a program that is supposed to detect pictures of corn. Well, you take a whole bunch of pictures of corn on the one hand, and a whole bunch of pictures of not corn on the other. And the program, let's say this program is 90% correct. Okay, now you take that program and you mutate it 5 times. You just randomly shift some of the variables in it. And then you test all 5 of those programs to see which one gets more than 90%. And you do this again and again. You have evolutionary generations of programs to see if they can detect corn. And by the end of it, you have this massively complex thing that no human can understand. The end result is we don't know how it identifies corn. All we know is that it's right 99.9% of the time. The computer doesn't know what it's doing. The computer is just following a spreadsheet. It's following a series of instructions. They are instructions way too complex for any of us to fit in our head. You know, the same way that nobody can imagine a billion of something. Well, again, like, Tay AI is a perfect example of this. Now, Tay AI was meant to mimic and react to its environment. And so 4chan, understanding a thing or two about how learning algorithms work, managed to reprogram it using Twitter to become a Nazi white supremacist artificial intelligence. There is no way that, well, there's a couple of hard, dumb ways that they could have prevented it, that Microsoft could have prevented the PR scandal. But, God, this is so funny. They could have put like a line of code, do not mention Hitler. Well, okay, but then you just reprogram it with something else. You know, instead of Hitler and the Jews, you'd reprogram it to say Darth Vader did nothing wrong and the Ewoks are scum. And so now you have this Darth Vader supporting anti-Ewok artificial intelligence. What you cannot do is try and explain to this artificial intelligence what is valuable, what PR is. The AI can tell you what the most successful PR campaign is when it's comparing campaign to campaign, but it can't tell you what is good, it can't tell you what is valuable. It is just running down a spreadsheet. You know, when we discuss, this is an issue that comes up very often with artificial driving, with the self-driving cars. It's the trolley problem. Now, the trolley problem in its simplified state is there's a train speeding out of control towards a tunnel full of 8 workers. And you're standing by a switch, which will move the train to another track to a tunnel, which only has 1 worker, should you pull the switch. Yeah, the simplest level, this is a question of what is ethics? What is morality? And there's an element of utility. It's better that only 1 person die than 8 people die, etc. And you can iterate this question in a number of different ways. And some of them become very complex. You know, should I imagine there's no switch, but there's a fat man on the train stand, and if you pushed him in front of the train, it would stop the train, saving the 8 people. But you know what? There's a difference between being a railway worker that you know it's a dangerous job versus just being a fat guy. So now there's a lot of layers to this conversation. Humans can debate this until the cows come home. And presumably, if you're going to design a self-driving car, in the event of an accident where there are no good solutions, you are going to have to program a least bad solution. You know, do I hit the married couple with the kid, or do I hit the homeless man?
Oh yeah, that's actually a segment from the movie I Am Robot. Like the reason why the main character is distrust robots is because the robot did something from a logical choice. There was a situation where he and a child was going to drown, and the robot only rescued him because he was the most logical choice to rescue, because he had a higher probability of survival.
Which is, Here's the thing. The robot didn't figure out what was the moral thing to do. It was already programmed. A human decided what the moral thing to do was. Okay, the computer just calculated probabilities. And so now you have the damn... If you have a 1% chance of rescuing a baby or a 99% chance of rescuing the mother, what do? The computer can only tell you the probabilities. We have to tell it the answer. But here's the real damnable thing about we're talking as if we could just program this into the bloody computer. Okay, no, you already have to have a computer that knows what a baby is and knows what a stray dog is and knows what a mailbox is and all of this other stuff. And we don't know how it tells the difference. When we come to the trolley problem, we can, maybe we won't get the right answers, but somebody can sit down and for every single trolley problem say, in this scenario, do this. In that scenario, do that. But the computer does not look at that picture Luke has up and see a bunch of people standing on the tracks. We don't know what the hell the computer sees. We have no idea how it sees. And so the issue becomes not whether or not the robot rescues Will Smith or the baby. The issue is everything is working absolutely fine until one day the computer decides to save a dead cat by slamming into a family of 4. And that's just the moral based on its programming and based on its observation of reality. That's what it chose.
And the funny thing about artificial, what you're kind of touching on, Davis, is what artificial intelligence is. The reason why we have difficulty doing it is because we don't know what consciousness is. And in order for anything to have intelligence or self-awareness, there needs to be a certain level of self-awareness, which a machine, we don't know how to program yet.
You see, in Gödel Escherbach, the author he talks about formal systems. And so he creates this one formal system that if you look at it and you figure out what's going on, you realize it's basic arithmetic. And he formulates it as such with there's a P and a Q in it, the P for plus and the Q for equals, to kind of suggest that you could map this system. The system is always x plus 1 equals x plus 1. So, if you replace x with 2, it goes 2 plus 1 equals 3. 3 plus 1 equals 4. 4 plus 1 equals 5, etc. And so suddenly the human looking at this has found meaning in this formal system. And he says, aha, the author of this formal system was talking about addition. Except you can also interpret it in another way. Because addition and subtraction are the exact same thing, you could say that it's actually the difference between 2 and 3 is 1. And both of those are equally valid interpretations because the formal system he put together has no inherent meaning. Whereas humans have inherent meaning in everything that we do. We have inherent valuation in everything we do. When we look at those collection of people standing on the tracks, when we look at the robot, the android, the mythical android that is all throughout science fiction, we see a person there. The computer does not see a person. It does not see meanings. It has a spreadsheet. This is what all of so much sci-fi gets this wrong. Because there's always the skeptical character that thinks the robot's just a computer, but no, the robot actually has a soul. The robot does not have a soul. The AI does not have an opinion on anything. The AI has no inherent self-preservation or any meaning or catharsis to its existence. It's just filling out a script.
Oh, the scene that really did this right was the beginning scene of Steven Spielberg's AI, when when the creator of the AI of the robots were suggesting that we need to take another step. He was illustrating with the robot in front of him. He stabs it in the hand, and so when he tries to stab it again, it repels away. But then he asks him, "What I do to you? You did to my hand."
I've only seen the first episode of Westworld, but once again, the suggestion is that these automatons are gaining sentience. Now, how many of us have played a video game, say an RPG? Ultima 8 was a good one for this, where there were all these mechanisms to prevent you from randomly murdering civilians in the game. Basically, if you murdered anybody that was innocent, the town wizard showed up and instantly killed you for murder. And it was very fun to try and bug out the game and leave traps for the civilians, then run far enough away that the wizard doesn't get triggered, or he gets triggered outside of your area so he can't kill you for it. And do you feel guilty for doing something like that? No, of course not, because the abstraction, like these are so obviously pixels on the screen. Now, in something like Westworld, these are algorithms that they look so convincingly human that if you were to do something evil to one of these, you would feel bad about it. Whereas in Ultima 8, you're just seeing if you can mess with the game system. You're just trying to bug it out. And yet again, in Westworld, supposedly these systems are gaining sentience. And they're not.
And the weird thing is that if a machine ever gains sentience, that would be a more interesting plot would be the robot realizing that actually has sentience and people not realizing that it does.
If anything, I'd say Asimov did a pretty good job of this, because his 3 laws of robotics are, now, first of all, trying to program that into a robot would be incredibly difficult, but the reader appreciates the fact that these laws are very, very mechanical. And so every single short story that Asimov writes, these robots are just obeying logic. So, the robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. The robot does not care if you are harmed. It cares about following the law. That's it. Now, eventually, later novels, there is a robot that discovers a zeroth law, as he calls it, the fundamental underlying all of this, the implied law that humanity needs to survive, not just individuals. So in that way, he kind of transcends his programming. But most science fiction doesn't do anything even near this level of complexity. I've been thinking of trying to illustrate this in a short story where the last human being alive doesn't even realize he's the last human being. On his deathbed, he's surrounded by friends and nurses and so forth. And every single one of them is just a very, very convincing artificial intelligence. Turns out that the entire world has been run by convincing artificial intelligences for a very long time that are concerned with making people happy. And as soon as the last human being dies, because there's no humans to take care of anymore, the entire computer network just shuts down. And that's it. And it goes quiet. It's not the killer robots that we need to worry about. All right, the robots don't have an agenda. They just obey rules. And now, I know that certain transhumanists would try and argue that they try and argue that we are just robots. And there are some very interesting examples of apparently intentional behavior in insects, which is pre-programmed. There's this one digger wasp that has this extremely complex bit of behavior where when it's setting up its nest, it does all of this stuff to clear out the area and whatnot. And after a couple of minutes, then it goes in the nest and starts laying eggs. Well, if you move the nest 2 inches back while it's doing that activity, it will walk towards the nest and then do the exact same thing over and over and over and over again. So apparent intentional behavior that is clearly just algorithmic in nature. And obviously, we have algorithmic aspects to ourselves. You know, on some level, we are meat machines. By the time it gets late at night, you get tired. Okay, that's mechanistic, that's predictable. You see a pretty girl, you say, "Nah, I'm going to play my World of Warcraft, man. Go away. Be gone, tot." But this ignores the fact, and I think this is what the author of Gödel Escher Bach is getting at. This is the metaphysics of it. Without valuation, there is no reality. And now you get the other really stupid sci-fi trope that belief makes reality. And yes, sort of, it does. Not in that.
But that's just subjectivism.
Well, that's the thing. If you put it in a really stupid way, it is just subjectivism. And so this is where you get, you know, Wesley Crusher with the space pedophile. Belief makes reality. If you believe, you can go faster than the speed of light. Which is not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that when you get down to the very nature of logic, it requires this additional ontological reality. If meaning doesn't exist, then logic is pointless. If valuation is not a thing, then you might as well be an SJW. You know, that way lies madness.
Oh, funny you should mention this, because this topic should come up because a particular atheist I've been following or I've been responding to, he has that certain presentation or that attitude about him where he's tried to make logic the end all be all of reality, and it's hard to articulate this because his arguments are kind of very simplistic and overbearing, but he is missing that out in that ontological argument. He's trying to see it, this is just logical and everything stems from these logical principles.
See, here's the thing. If that was the halting problem, demonstrates, it proves that a purely logical system cannot stop itself from crashing. A system that is nothing but logic, the moment it receives an input that's not correct, it freezes. And we do not see this with humans or animals. You can argue that you can see it with insects, but we do not see it with humans or animals. Humans don't crash. And if the mind were nothing but a logical system, it would crash all the time. You would have animals that just from some weird input, like when your computer crashes, it's never for a good reason. And it's usually something you can't even figure out what it was. Was it the Flash app over on Facebook? Was it the Word document I have open? Was it some sort of webcam software? You have no idea what it was that caused your computer to crash. They just do sometimes for no reason. You're just doing what you've always done 1,000 times before and it crashes. People and animals don't do that. People and animals behave with intention. An animal does not start walking sideways all of a sudden. You know, there's also
something really wrong in his brain, of course.
Well, and you know what? If you misfire certain neurons, like there's an aspect of the brain which is very, very much like a computer. I mean, it's not binary the way a computer is, but it essentially, yeah, the brain does work like a biological computer. The same way that your tendons work exactly the same as pulleys in principle. So there is that aspect to it. And if you misfire the brain, you know, if you send an electrode through a certain part, you're going to smell a cheese sandwich. And yet there's this, on the ontological level, there is this meaning, this valuation. This is something you see coming up in evolution as well. You know, my parents, their stupid dog just ate a rock, and they had to spend $2,500 getting the rock removed from the stupid thing's intestines, which, by the way, Space Dog, you're getting turned into noodles with poodles if that happens. You're not worth $2,500. But, you know, this got me thinking of gizzards and how birds will they'll eat pebbles and rocks so that, you know, if they have a gizzard where the pebbles and rocks help crush up wheat. So, oh my God. Seriously, don't even get any ideas, you. God, she's wagging her tail. She has ideas.
Oh no, I see rubber ducky.
So here's the thing. How does the chicken know to eat pebbles? Now, listen, guys, I believe in evolution. I'm convinced of evolution. There is a lot of evidence for evolution. When you talk about Darwin's finches, when you look at ring species, when you look at the genetic, like, if you want to completely deny evolution, it's absolutely absurd in my opinion. Speciation happens all the time. We see it. And yet there's this curiously directed angle to evolution. How does a dog know that, oh, look, that pile of leaves over there will be a comfortable place to sleep tonight? Now, the dog has the instinctual behavior. It needs to walk in 3 circles before it can lie down. But the dog doesn't need to evolve to understand that couches are, like, leaves are comfortable, but so are couches. The chicken somehow knows to eat rocks to go into its gizzard. Can you imagine Boston Dynamics? Imagine that there's a virus spreads around the world and kills all the life forms, and nothing is left alive aside from all the prototypes at Boston Dynamics. And these machines suddenly, they somehow figure out how to reproduce and pass on their engineering code to one another. Can you imagine things like Big Dog evolving in a meaningful way? You know, the number of ways that things can go wrong with just a slight mutation are incredible. And yes, there is natural selection. That is an aspect of it. You know, when you study the evolution of the eye, it's absolutely fascinating. And let's be quite frank, we are not perfectly evolved. Okay, for instance, you have a blind spot in your eye. You can find the blind spot, actually, if you take a white piece of paper and draw 2 X's on it, and then bring the paper close, like start out arm's length, just bring it slowly close. Eventually, the 2 X's that you drew will disappear. Because our eyes are actually designed backwards. The photoreceptors are on the outside of the eyeball, and all of the cables go on the inside, and then there's a hole where you can't see anything, because that's the stems going back into your brain. Whereas octopi don't have that problem. Their eyes are evolved much more sensibly than ours. So our eyes actually evolved backwards. They work well enough, but they evolved backwards. So yeah, guys, I'm familiar with all of this. I'm not trying to say that it's impossible. What I'm trying to say is that there is way more pattern than there should be. It's almost as if, you know, there's the tale of the 101st monkey. where there's these two islands and they're separated by an ocean, and the monkey is on the one island. One of them picks up a stick and starts poking at a termite mound, and he figures out he can use a tool to get the termites. And soon all the monkeys on his island are doing this. The other island, at the same time as all the other monkeys do this, and they have no contact, but one of them starts poking at the mound. It's almost as if when it's time for an idea to appear, it just manifests. And this is something I see a lot. Great strokes of genius do not happen through a logical process. You need to be able to do all the logic. You need to educate yourself in the field. You don't come up with a great theory of physics. Wild Matsu says morphogenic fields. That's actually what I am talking about, but people think it's like a magical glowy field of special Star Trek alien energy. Morphogenic just means that something can appear in multiple forms. That meaning can transcend. That something as abstract as arithmetic can also be used when you're figuring out how many damn oranges you want to buy at the grocery store. Yeah, see, that right there is not a morphogenic field. That's an artist that's seen too much Star Trek right there. But there is something to this, that when an ideal... So the way a stroke of genius happens is, we'll take Einstein for an example. So he is familiar with all the current theories of physics, also the problems with the current theories of physics. And then one day, and he's just thinking and thinking, and he's like running through this, and boom, suddenly he figures it out. He doesn't understand why he's right. When you first get a big idea, you do not know why you're right. In fact, you have to probably spend the next 2 or 3 years explaining to yourself why you're right. But you know you're right. These strokes of genius, they are blasts out of the blue. It's not a logical process that creates them. It's like, boom, it's time for it. The task of the intellectual is to explain why the obvious truth is right. See, that's the thing. That is such an audacious statement that Luke just put up there. I don't always know what I'm talking about, but I know I'm right. Anybody that is going to challenge the established status quo, anybody like Einstein or Gödel or anybody, it is so completely audacious. Making Star Wars, for example, how audacious are you? Nobody thought Star Wars was going to do well because it was so weird. But Lucas just bolt from the blue. Yes, this is what needs to be done. And we're still trying to figure out why Star Wars was so successful. We're still talking about that to this day. And yeah, actually, morphogenic field is the correct term for it, except that's been associated with all this crystal healing bullshit. This is actually a foundational element to information theory. And it's very hard to see. If you explain it to somebody dumb, they think they can just sit there meditating and then they'll be granted the secrets of the universe. No. Yes, but no. Okay, the secret of the universe doesn't allow you to... You don't get the Force like Luke Skywalker. You do in a certain way. Look at Jordan Peterson. You think Jordan Peterson... Have you not seen Jordan B. Peterson do the Jedi mind trick on many people? Oh, and hey, Wild Mats, no, I didn't take offense at that at all. That's a funny thing. Morphogenic field is it's been completely abused, which is why nobody with nobody that's being serious will actually use the term now, but it is actually the correct term. And this right here, this is a Jedi mind trick. How does Peterson know he's right? It helps that he's studied Jung. It helped. Let me put it another way. How did I know I was right when I delineated the personality, the borderline and psychopath, histrionic, and narcissist? How did I know I was right?
One might immediately say like experience.
Well, experience informed it. I wouldn't have been able to receive this bolt from the blue without experience. But I've actually had a great deal of contact with psychologists who've said, yeah, this guy nailed it. There is this element to knowledge that it's revelation. And you don't even know why you know you're right. And I spent a long time working through those ideas before I presented them in video form. Same thing with Peterson. When he became Jordan B. Peterson, the man you guys all know, he'd been doing this for years. He's not even sure what he did to turn himself into the present incarnation. He's still trying to figure it out. He's still watching and learning from everything he's doing right now. And see, the exact same thing happens with evolution. There is this niche to be filled. There's this way of being that can be done. And it starts moving in that direction. The same thing goes for language. If logic were all there is, language should be impossible. And yet language is, well, you know what? The postmodernist would hold that language is impossible. The postmodernists hold that language is nothing but an arbitrary cultural supremacy. And so even our mathematics, 2 + 2 = 4, is cultural hegemony. That is what they hold to. And it's a coherent belief system that there is no such thing as truth. But it sends you straight to hell. But for us to say that there is meaning to language, there has to be something out there that is meaning. And we haven't captured that. We can't. In fact, this is Gödel's incompleteness theorem, which demonstrates we cannot capture meaning, that a container cannot contain itself, that we require this source of absolute meaning to be eternal and previous to the universe. Something Peterson said. There's a really good interview hit with him on the Rubin Report with Ben Shapiro. I really enjoyed it. You guys should check that out. It is, we were mentioning earlier, don't become that which, don't be very careful fighting monsters, lest you become that which you oppose. And that's what's happened with those jokers over on Kiwi Farms, isn't it, Luke?
Yeah, basically, and it was really weird when I looked up how specific they were in my location or trying to find my location.
Why? I mean, like, the absolute worst thing that you could say about Luke is Okay, so he doesn't have the best animation on his YouTube videos. All right.
Or I'm a Steven Universe fan, I guess, if that counts for something.
You're kind of dorky and you're a nice guy. And I mean, you're still better than most of the stuff on Newgrounds, but yeah, okay. So aren't you just a horrible person? Let's track this guy down. We need to find out what he looks like. We need to find out his name and where he lives and where he works so we can get him fired because he does a YouTube video. What
It's
the
almost like it's like they have nothing more than a pastime of knowing people or knowing their true identities. It's like it's not enough to simply enjoy their personality on the YouTube or their personality online, but they have to find out who you are, find out the essence of who you are.
As if it freaking matters. Like, listen, it's like Luke. You haven't started a fight with anybody ever. I understand that I'm a contentious sort of a person, and I talk like a fag. So I get that some people really don't like me for those reasons. But like Luke is like just the gentlest, most innocuous guy out there, and Kiwi Farms even hates him.
Well, I guess I'm told that I have an attitude in the videos I made, so maybe there's some truth in that.
You got an attitude, man. Okay, it's about time I start drinking whiskey. I'm done the coffee. Be careful that you become that which you oppose. And, you know, I was saying to Forney the other day, it's like, you know what? I got to stop talking about the alt-right because it's not good for me. You know, I know I've been pretty dark lately. That speech from Trump really lifted my spirits. And see, the reason I bring all of this up is the conversation between Peterson and Shapiro. Now, I've always liked Shapiro, but then he said some things that upset people in the alt-right, and then it's this big, stupid internet slap fight. Jolly Crocodile might hop in a little bit. Just let me finish my thoughts for now, brother. So here's my point. Peterson and Shapiro, they actually had a very, very good discussion about Christianity and Judaism, about the Jewish place in Western civilization. They are having these conversations that nobody else seems to be able to have. And I really, really enjoyed that. I want to have conversations with people, not arguments with people. Because if you argue with people, and this is, well, I'll say this briefly. This is what has happened to the alt-right. You know, the SJWs, the radical left, has completely embraced identity politics. And the alt-right has said, oh yeah, well, we're going to do the same thing and we're not going to lose. But in the process, they have become that which they were opposing. And I don't want to have internet bum fights. I want to have conversation and discourse and interesting ideas. I want to look for the truth. Because I tell you what, just fighting with people all the time is just so negative. It's so depressing. So, I mean, there's plenty of...
And it's not really enough. Like I like a controversy too, to a certain extent, but I like controversy for the sake of understanding and communicating. Like I can get like interested in a topic and argue it, but just like going out in the streets and throwing punches at people who say, "Oh, these people are Nazis" or something like that. That's tiresome. That's boring. That really wears you down after a while.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just a lover, not a fighter. I'd rather be cuddling with my girlfriend. Now, Peterson said something during that conversation that I think really hit the nail on the head. It's something I've been thinking about. It's something that William Rome said the other night when I was talking with him. See, Peterson said that we are in the midst of an idea revolution. And what William Rome said is that the Enlightenment, the Renaissance thinking is dead. The Enlightenment's played out. Like, we are seeing a transforming world right now, and we don't know what that is. The language that we have to try and talk about it's all Enlightenment language. And that's not what's happening right now. There is something very, very new and maybe old, but it's different. What we're seeing is foundationally different. Yeah, I would even say to a certain extent that the left-right paradigm is dead. The most interesting people out there, I find, are the ones that are not talking in terms of the left and the right. Like Shapiro, yes, he's a conservative. But that conversation, like, that never really comes up in this conversation. I mean, it's mentioned, but it's not an issue. The postmodernism. Like, I was addressing postmodernism with the dissolution of language, that the postmodernists really believe there is no such thing as language, there's just cultural hegemony. And that is the natural result of modernism, because modernism, it foundationally rejects a God or an absolute source of meaning, of truth. I mean, if you're not going to call that God, I don't know what you would call God. You might as well call it God. But see, that obsession, and you can see like the skeptic community, the atheist cult, these guys are kind of they're just the low rent remake of a classic film. All right, the whole skeptic, this is just modernism repackaged with candy coating, okay, and a large budget for special effects. They're nothing new. Okay, we did the whole modernism thing over 50 years ago. And if you look at how self-destructive the skeptic community is. Now, I guess I'm kind of talking about some of the inside baseball I know. Again, I don't need to tell you you guys the details. If you just open your eyes and look at these skeptics, look at the individuals in it, and tell me that they're living good lives. Ask yourself, what sort of debauchery do they get up to? And I'll tell you right now, whatever you're imagining, it's probably a lot worse. Do these people have healthy souls? Do they have meaningful, good lives? Not really. And the sort of things that they're engaged in their private life eventually becomes SJW. It becomes, you aren't allowed to judge me, you have to respect my gender pronouns. The Enlightenment philosophy has run its course. Again, and I'm quoting Peterson here, but I've said the exact same thing myself. Nietzsche was right about everything except the solution. He tried to come up with the best solution he could to forestall the inevitable future he saw. 100 million dead in the 20th century, which is exactly what he predicted. The death of God, which is what the Enlightenment was. It was the death of God. We no longer needed God's law to manage man. We came up with the Charter of Rights and Human Freedoms. And we'll just manage man using that. And eventually this dissolves into the positive rights. You have a right to dignity. You have a right to health care. You have a right to gender reassignment surgery if you're born in the wrong body. But this is not that somebody misunderstood the Enlightenment. This is the inevitable path that the Enlightenment sent us on. And we're done with that now. The interesting question is, where do we go from here? Part of the problem with trying to live in the past is that you come up with solutions that would only have worked in the past. The internet adds a new dimension to things. The Boeing 747 adds a new dimension to things. Mass monitoring adds a new dimension to things. Artificial intelligence, all these new dimensions to things. There's the fact that we basically are living in a post-scarcity world at this point. And we don't know what the hell to do with that. Because the post-scarcity is good in that people in the West, they don't starve to death anymore. Nobody starves to death. They might be homeless, they might be diseased, they might have terrible diets. They might freeze to death, but nobody starves to death anymore. So you have this wonderful aspect of being post-scarcity. But on the other hand, you have the absolute moral necessity of work. Man needs work for dignity. If you're not working, you become very self-destructive. And yet, we don't need people to work. And the current path we're on is to shunt more and more people into the welfare state, where we distract them with toys and with candy. And if they cause too much problems, we just put them in prison. Prison's just another form of welfare, folks. All right, we take all those people, we can't find a useful role for them, so we just shove them into prisons, we shove them into the ghettos. And the size of this welfare class, if everything stayed on the current trajectory, which it won't, things never do, but if it were to, if you work this into the future, eventually 90% of the population is in the welfare state. And we're all living in ugly prefab structures, and we're being fed all sorts of soy and birth control. And, the elites don't want to kill us because that would be evil. Instead, they'll just destroy our souls. 3 hots in a cot, says Rich. Yeah, FEMA camps. Now, that is a horrific solution to the problem of post-scarcity. Under the Enlightenment paradigm, under the capitalist paradigm, it's inevitable. Now, the difficulty, I say that under the capitalist paradigm, and people, oh, so you're a Marxist now? No. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Yeah, Marx was complaining of overproduction as a means of exploitation from the higher ups of the upper class. You're referring to the danger of overproduction as cutting off our work, our own personal dignity.
See, both capitalism and Marxism are fundamentally, they are modernist ideas, they are materialist ideas. The only focus is on how should goods and services be produced. Both of them start from the assumption of grinding poverty. So with capitalism, the argument is that if you leave people to their own devices, free trade will flourish and everybody becomes better off. Under Marxism, they say that the elite will seize the means of production, and so the average person will never have a chance to better themselves. And so we need a radical reorientation where we program everybody not to be greedy or selfish. We eliminate human sins and the world will be beautiful. And now we all know how that turned out. Capitalism turned out a hell of a lot better than Marxism did.
That's an understatement.
But they're both, to a certain extent, they're missing the forest for the trees. Capitalism was answering a very contemporary question. How do we increase human well-being by increasing wealth? And that's not a question that should just be blithely ignored. Far too many people role play, they cosplay as Marxists because they're rich kids.
They don't need to worry about where their work money is coming from because everyone else is working for it.
Exactly. You know, this is why you tend to find the working class is far more capitalist these days than the privileged class. It used to be the other way around, where the working class was the ones like, oh, I want more money. So they were the ones attracted to Marxism, and the upper class was the ones with the money to do all of this stuff. But we're so wealthy now that the poor people want to pay less taxes because, like, man, if I can get $100 together, if I can get $1,000 together, I can invest in myself and make even more money. Whereas the upper classes are so divorced from starvation that they've become the Marxists. And so there's an element with some people looking at the disaster that the social disaster and concluding that we need Marxism. The social disaster of a generation of unemployable kids. Hey, Jolly, glad you could join us.
Hey, man, how's it going?
Pretty good. What are your thoughts tonight?
They're not exactly relevant right now. I don't want to interrupt you with what you were saying, but I mean, you were talking about the transhumanism, so I was kind of thinking about that.
Oh, well, we're still on that topic, man. Give me your thoughts on it.
Well, I wanted to know your thoughts about it, because when I look at media, and I'm doing some like extremely esoteric, bizarre research right now, but I'm reading like the Corpus Hermeticum, and that's the source of what alchemy is, the idea of like transmuting lead into gold, right? So I'm actually looking into that, and transhumanism, I think, has a lot in common to that, and it seems to be, from what I see, there's a lot of like glorification of transhumanism, and there seems to be like a very clear trend in media of having like commercials or movies show like a positive view of transhumanism. I mean, how many movies have you seen where, some woman gets like 100% of her mental capacity unlocked and she becomes like a superhuman? Or, there's the Ghost in the Shell movie that was just made. Yeah, so I mean, and there's a lot of like commercials too. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the transhumanist stuff, but like, what do you think? I think there's a dedicated like shilling for this on the part of the mainstream media, or like, media and entertainment.
I'll be honest, I think it's just good sci-fi. I think it's a very compelling topic. And I think we're, right now, it's like the robot servant, the robot butler. That was a big thing in the 70s. Because in the 70s, nobody had butlers anymore, but apparently rich people did like 50 years ago or something. Like back around the Gilded Age, people would have a household servant. And although in the 1950s, the social attitudes would have, having a house servant would have been offensive to most people in the 1950s. And yet, wouldn't it be nice if there were somebody that after a long day of work could just like bring you your slippers and your brandy? You'd never do that, of course, because that's akin to slavery, and we're America. We just fought the Nazis because they liked slaves or something. But the robot servant would kind of solve that. Whereas you don't see robot servants appearing in modern movies. In fact, to bring up iRobot, which Luke mentioned, it almost seemed like a movie out of time because it had these robot servants, these humanoid, what's that servant on the Jetsons? Lucy or something like that? Rosie. I mean, Fallout has those robots, but it's a ironic callback to the 1950s. So I'll be honest, the transhumanism, it's a very compelling idea. it really seems to answer questions that intelligent geeks would have without really answering them. The same way that Rosie is the answer to a middle class that they would never have a manservant, but they kind of want a manservant. And so if you had a robot doing all of it, it's okay. And with the transhumanism, I think we have a lot of intelligent people. They're very frustrated by their circumstances. They're probably working at something that... See, work is always going to be work. You can't be a pussy about it. It's not that working at a coffee shop is bad, but that you have so many corporate rules you're supposed to follow. And so they feel very trapped in all of this. And imagine if we could all upload to World of Warcraft. And you could just download a different set of genitals like you do in Second Life. I think it offers something very compelling. And we haven't really begun investigating it. Like, this is just the... it's just getting to the point where enough people have... I think video games had a huge part in this. Because being in an interactive reality, like one of the Fallout games or any of these first-person shooters, you start to imagine different possibilities because it's such a convincing world in a way that video games weren't 20 years ago. For instance, like Tron really doesn't have any transhumanist aspects. Yes, it has people being uploaded to a computer, but you notice that it's not a copy of the person being uploaded to the computer. I was watching a review of the video game Soma, and it's interesting. I saw the Markiplier playthrough of Soma, and no, and I don't mean this is bad, but I was already so familiar with transhumanist concepts that I thought the premise of Soma was rather pedestrian. Now, that said, they actually get it right. One of the major issues... Actually, I'm not going to ruin that. Guys, go play Soma if you don't know anything about... Let's just say that if you're going to upload yourself to a computer, well, what happens to the you that got uploaded? What happens if there's a transport accident and there's a second William Riker? The transhumanist movies right now are just showing the cool, nifty effects of it, like the Jetsons. Because people are just beginning to wake up to, what if I could live inside of a computer? But there's also the negative side. And so actually, I have to give Soma some credit. You see what's happening right there is the computer in charge of the base, its only goal is to preserve human life without regard for quality of life. And so even though it's the main antagonist, you can't say it's evil because it's just a damn computer program.
And there's the halting problem again.
Exactly. So I wouldn't say it's propaganda, but it's just more it's an idea that's coming of age. So yeah, I found the ideas in Soma very obvious, but that said, they got the ideas 100% correct.
I don't know. I'm pretty much 100% against like the ideas of transhumanism. I think the ideas that are going on and sci-fi now, I think all of them are like pretty bad.
Well, the thing is that it's bullshit. The same way
I don't think transhumanism is so much bullshit. I think it's kind of Luciferian. I mean, I'm not a Christian, but I'd go so far as to say it's satanic in nature.
And I understand that concern about being Luciferian, but really, the thing that really bothers me most about transhumanism is that it's impossible because, you know, I watched a lot of sci-fi as a kid. Like, really? We're never going to have those cool robot stuff in the future? That's boring.
Now, listen, if you want to... See, and I know what you're saying. Now, let's look at the Jetsons, where and Luke just had the brilliant image up of Rosie next to the black slave. And if we had... I'm sure that you can find some pretentious intellectual that was writing a paper about how the Jetsons promotes racism. Well, that's a little bit of an overstatement, but it does in a way, doesn't it? You know, there's still this desire to enslave people In this case, we're enslaving robots, so it's not slavery anymore. But then you get the Matrix where the robots rebel. And now, yeah, exactly. There's Rosie about to kill Neo. So this idea of robotic servants is, well, first of all, that's not what robots are not slaves. A robot servant is one of those little, what are those automated vacuums?
Well, a Roomba?
Yeah, a Roomba is and it gets stuck in the corner. There's a Roomba in
Roombas are satanic. Roombas are Luciferian. The devil is slowly corrupting your household if you have a Roomba. No, I mean, like I don't know. We might not be on the same page here, but I don't mean transhumanism. Like you have a robot servant.
Bear with me a bit further. Now, the problems I see with yeah, there you go. There you go. The problems with transhumanism is they assume that technological solutions will solve moral issues and ontological issues. So here's one example. In the transhumanist realm, there's no more disease, right? We've solved every single disease. Except that that's not what disease is. Disease is not a problem. Diseases evolve alongside our technology. Yeah, that's not going to happen right there. Death is an innate part of the universe. We can extend life, we can cure many diseases, but as we develop antibiotics, the viruses evolve to become antibiotic resistant. And at the end of the day, if you want to be healthy, you need to clean your house. You need to shower, you need to, etc. You know, again, this goes back to the Bible. The poor will always be with you. You are always going to have people that choose bad choices. You know, the funny thing about poor people is if you've ever met somebody that's living in poverty, they actually probably have more nice stuff than you do. Because every time they get a paycheck, they go and spend it on a brand new video game console. They go and spend it on brand new clothing. And then they don't take care of anything, and they have no wealth. And this is a moral problem that transhumanism completely ignores. You know, if you put real people into the Star Trek universe, you know, like Star Trek never shows you Earth. Because most people on Earth would actually be broken degenerates addicted to holodecks. And they'd be obese, eating nothing but candy. And I don't care how great your medical scanner is. If somebody has destroyed their vascular system by constantly overburdening it with too much sugar, it doesn't matter that you can just lase a wound and make it better. Like, you're going to have people dying prematurely. So that's one of the like the transhumanist dream is, oh, if only I could live in a computer game. It promises impossible things. And through promising those impossible things, it starts driving you to live an unsustainable lifestyle. And this is the Luciferian angle I think you're pointing out. You know, there's a website, Less Wrong. LessWrong.com. And there's a lot of great stuff on Less Wrong. Okay, you guys can do a whole wiki walk on that site, and there's a lot of concepts on there that'll blow your mind if you haven't run into them before. It's a very cool website. However, they're also dedicated transhumanists, and one of the things they have got up to is learning to hack their brains to be poly and bisexual. You know, there's all of us. Seriously, there's us here in the traditionalist right, where we're trying to warn against using pornography because it will rewire your brain into becoming a pervert. Whereas they're saying, geez, how can I watch more porn to rewire my brain even better? So that's the dark angle to it. Because in the transhumanist realm, there are no STDs. There is no reason for commitment. There is nothing but hedonism. And they wrap it up in higher language, right? Like the hedonists on Star Trek Well, they just explore the galaxy and discuss philosophy. Whereas in reality, the hedonists on 4chan just find they're constantly researching animal genitalia to draw on cartoon women. And I think Warhammer 40K gets it very right with the elf analog in that series, the Dark Elves, where they became, like, they drove hedonism to the point where the only thing that could get them off was torturing slaves to death. So yeah, transhumanism promises you space philosopher and video game world. The reality is sadism and nihilism.
Yeah, the reason why I was getting into the alchemy stuff is I just recently gave a shout out to this guy on my channel. There's this guy called Dr. Deep State, and he kind of talks about how, the elites or the New World Order or whatever you want to call it have this their kind of philosophy, their root philosophy has a lot in common, or it comes from like the alchemic principles, and the whole idea of alchemy. It's not actually about transmuting metals or, into a different metal or something. It's about changing humans into something else. It's like changing the lead that humanity is now into. Yeah, reading the, alchemy books that I was reading, there is a lot of weird stuff in it that kind of like, that I would say is very Luciferian. Like it says that man and God are the same thing. That everything has a hermaphrodite nature to it. Everything is male and female. So yeah, there's a lot of, and like it's very transhuman with the idea of transmuting yourself. So yeah, it's very weird to see that this old philosophy has a lot in common with what I'd say is kind of the philosophy of the elites today.
You are absolutely correct. You are absolutely correct that transhumanism is just repackaged alchemy. It's alchemy with a sci-fi veneer. Now, that said, there's actually quite a bit of things that are valuable in alchemy. I joked at one point that, Phil Mason would have been far better off studying alchemy as opposed to chemistry, because he might have mastered the physical world, but he is an absolute babe in the woods when it comes to managing his own soul. So there's quite a bit of value, like if you're interested in studying it, and I'm by no means an expert, but there's quite a bit of value to be found in alchemy, because the Philosopher's Stone is about knowing yourself. It's the metaphor for being able to look at yourself and know what you are and unleash your potential in that. And again, this can be used in a positive or negative way. You can use this to, you can use alchemy to go clean your room, as Peterson would suggest. Or you can use it to hack your brain so that now you're a bisexual poly.
Well, I mean, to my mind, it's like reading the Talmud, where I just get a straight up bad feeling. But I suppose there are some good things with alchemy. I mean, the book, the Corpus Hermeticum, is not that big. So, I mean, you guys, honestly, you could probably read it in like 4 hours.
It's another thing Peterson said on that conversation with him and Ben Shapiro is, on the one hand, he's known people that have done LSD and had profound religious experiences, and they come out of it and say, like, I now have a guiding principle in my life, or this cured my depression, or I no longer feel a need to smoke cigarettes, what have you. But then there are also people that go do LSD and get drunk and use that as an excuse to go start physically assaulting other people. The problem with something like LSD is that it is so real, it's not a game. When you start dealing with this stuff, this is not a game. You are dealing with something more real than objective reality. And if you're not ready for it, it can do an incredible amount of damage to you. Same thing with alchemy. Same thing with, we can use transhumanist technology. And I mean that in a very loose term, a very loose assessment. We can use this for great good, like restoring limbs. There's some amazing work being done on prosthetic limbs right now. It is absolutely revolutionary what is happening with prosthetic limbs. But we can also use the darker elements. We're developing very disturbing technologies for the sake of controlling the mind. You know, one of the things they're doing that I wish they would stop is they're learning how to read minds, how to read your thoughts. And you know, Christians will be the first one to say that you should not have evil thoughts. You need to discipline yourself. You need to be paying attention to what you're thinking. And yet at the same time, your individual thoughts should be sacrosanct. What you are thinking is between you and God. You know, all that I can care about as another man is what you're doing. And if you're obeying the law, then your thoughts are none of my business. It's sort of like currency. You know, a currency that's only allowed to be used for quote unquote moral things is no sort of currency whatsoever. A real currency can be used by the saint and by the criminal. You know, or as my philosopher friend said, logic is a whore. She'll give anyone a ride.
Hey, Blaze on the right's asking if he can join. You mind if I invite him?
Oh, yeah. Toss him the link. All right, there he is. So we've got a couple more people joining in. And you know, while we're waiting for them, I had a little point. Like, I have a whole bunch of show notes. We haven't even gotten through a quarter of my show notes. One thing I noticed recently, an important data point to keep in mind when we're talking about the elites, the Illuminati, the people that are pushing these ugly cultural narratives, is that if you go and look at them, their families are extremely broken. Their families are just as broken as everybody else. There are countless examples of inheritors of wealth. Like, isn't there there's the one heiress to the Rothschilds? And she's just your typical tot at this point. So here's an idea. What if the biggest problem in the world is that the elites who run things are just as shitty at being parents as everybody else's parents? What if they're just as shitty as the father that sends his daughter off to university with birth control and a package of condoms? What if their failures civilizationally are their failures as parents? You know, like, one of the issues that some of us have with baby boomers is that very few of us are going to be receiving inheritances. Many baby boomers are very focused on spending every last penny before they die. The baby boomers they didn't do the best job setting up their kids for success. And I don't want to turn this into an anti-baby boomer rant, because there's two sides to that story as well. You know, if you hate the baby boomers too much, it becomes Hegelian dialectic. You're being played. Oh, geez. Now, if that is not a 1,000-cock stare, I don't know what is. So what if these are just bad parents writ large? The same way that our parents told us to get useless degrees and encourage their daughters to, you know, become fake men and all of this. What if the elites are just doing this on a grander scale? And it's not so much a conspiracy to destroy the West. It's just shitty parenting. It's always important to keep in mind that, like, yes, there are conspiracies, but the conspiracies aren't usually as big as you might think. if you take something like Pizzagate, I am fairly confident in saying that nowhere is there a document and procedure in which you go to the young movie star and say, all right, you want to be a movie star, you have to go have sex with this 14-year-old girl while we videotape it, and then we'll make you a millionaire. It's far more subtle than that, far less organized than that. And Neurocraft just tossed me a super chat. Here's some mammons for one of those Catholic capes and a chalkboard. Oh, I wish capes were still in style, man. Capes are cool. I'd dress like the Shadow if I could get away with it. Yeah, purveyor of mercy. Never put malice on something where stupidity explains it better. So yeah, there is a conspiracy, but it's not as formal as we might like to believe. And I really think an aspect of this, it's just where our civilization is. Like, why are the baby boomers, to a large extent, not leaving inheritances to their kids? Well, because we're living in a world that's very post-scarcity right now. So why should they have to? You know, you just get a mortgage and a credit card, and boom, there you go. There's no more building wealth for a future. We are all imagining that we are at the end of history. Oh, and by the way, since you know what, we got more than one person in here, I can actually turn the camera on. Hey, folks.
Yeah, no, I think the baby boomers are so responsible just because they're so rich that they think they can afford to be stupid. Because for all of their lives, that's been true, that, you know, Americans can be dumb because they're so fortunate. It's just gotten to a point now where that's not true anymore. Baby boomers don't know that, you know, times have changed.
Well, and the elites are planning to reduce the world population because, well, why the hell wouldn't they? Everyone's just spending their stupid paychecks on Nike sneakers and bubblegum. Anyway, we got Blaze on the right, and we got James Morse. How's it going, guys?
How's it going for you, Aurini?
Going pretty well, I would say. Just going to get more ice. Keep talking.
All right. So what were you guys talking about?
Damn, what were we talking about? Roombas are satanic and Luciferian. That's the conclusion Aurini came to anyways. I argued against that, but he was very vehement about the satanic Roomba conspiracy. We were talking about alchemy and transhumanism, which Aurini was also supportive of. He wanted a robot arm or something like that. And really, that was it.
A Roomba once rolled over my pack of cigarettes.
Oh, hey, Aurini.
Yeah, I actually had a slight question. I didn't know if it was, well, this is the question I posited to Davis on Skype, and it was something I mentioned, I think, to him and John Collins, I think, post Hangout one time. Stem cell research. I've not heard many people's thoughts on that when it comes to people like Davis and Bearcloth and all that. I'd like to hear everyone's opinions if they do have any on that.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know enough about it. I'm very listen, you know the beauty industry? Some products actually brag about the fact that they use baby foreskins in their products, and that's just absolutely disgusting. I would say that anything that is actively profiting off of the misery of innocence is evil. But then you've got the question, should we just throw out all the evidence from the Nazi scientists? They're complex questions. So, but I understand, though, there's stem cell research being done right now that does not involve abortions.
Yeah, I mean, when I used to do A-level biology, embryonic stem cells were the bulk of it, but apparently, 'cause, again, stem cell isn't something specific. It's sort of like a blank template cell that essentially, when it's grouped this is a layman's basic, essentially the layman's description, but essentially you put it with another group of cells and it sort of adopts the traits. Embryonic cells happen to be the best sort of, it's basically the easiest stem cells you can get, but apparently bone marrow, you can also get it from there, but as you can see, it's probably a lot harder to get it from bone marrow and not as abundant.
I don't know. Using like aborted baby fetuses to, research medical advancement. I know that's not all stem cell research is, but it just
oh yeah, and so
it's deeply disturbed.
You know what? The way that you do something very much determines your results.
Yeah.
If you use evil methods, like for instance, I think one of the saving graces we have in North America is the fact that we did not genocide the Native Americans. We easily could have. And some might argue that things would be a lot easier for us in North America if there weren't any red men left. But I think that we would pay for it in a different way. When you use evil to achieve an objective, I categorically reject the notion that the ends justify the means. Your means will become those ends. If you use lies to...
If you use foul means, you'll get foul ends.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and the disease that hit the Native American, that was not intentional on our part. Like the history between the Native Americans and the European colonizers, it's a very complex history. There were crimes committed on both sides. We ultimately were victorious primarily because of A, disease ravaging the natives, and B, having more advanced property law. The natives did not have a concept of property. And so just because we were better, the house always wins. So the natives were playing our game when they started selling or leasing us property that they had a claim to. And that's ultimately what took over the West, is property law, not colonial adventurism. In fact, the Brits did not want to expand further west, but land speculators got involved, and the Brits couldn't stop that without undermining their entire legal system, because the British legal system is founded upon property law. So that's a huge tangent. So to go back to we're entering an era of ideas. This is my point with the elites hating their native people. It's almost like, to an extent, it's... Now, let me categorically say that blaming the baby boomers for our problems is a misstep, okay? The baby boomers have damn good reasons for being the way they are. And I know the eternal boomer, sometimes it's very frustrating. I was having a conversation with my parents about this whole topic. And I'm trying to explain to them how bad things are out there in the dating market. And my parents respond with basically, well, we know all these young people that are married. But finally, I found a fact that kind of got through to them. I said, do you know that 25% of women between 20 and 30 in Calgary have an STD right now?
Oh, that's awful.
And 15% have two.
Oh,
see, that kind of got through, and so it's not that they're horrible people because they have this very different perspective, and because the generations are so isolated from one another. This is a social. This is the weight of history upon us. This is the era that we are living in. This is the end of the Enlightenment, and so. If you think about the difficulty communicating with your own parents on such things, and this is coming from a guy that's 36, okay? I was having this conversation while getting drunk with my parents, okay? So it's not like angsty, fuck you, Dad, I'm gonna listen to my music. No, it's nothing like that whatsoever. If you think about that, and then you take it to the big picture where you have this political and economic elite that is very divorced from the bread and butter, meat and potatoes working class, it's kind of a similar relationship. So is there sometimes some animosity? Yes. But is it directed animosity? I remember during Occupy Wall Street, there was a hedge fund millionaire or billionaire or whatever in New York. He wrote an article addressed to his other elites saying that, listen, if we don't fix this economic system, they're going to eat us alive, and they're right to do so. But at the same time, his proposals were the typical socialist, raise the minimum wage bullshit, which is not a solution. So again, it's not hostility for the most part. It's the weight of history that's upon us. I mean, sometimes there's hostility. Sometimes there's boomer parents that are just greedy, or that they're cucks, or what have you. But seeing people as enemies doesn't lead you to a solution. Okay, the Hegelian conflict, fighting with your parents, like the millennials versus the boomers, or the left versus the right, or the blacks versus the whites, is not a solution. In fact, it makes the problem that much worse.
What about the Jew versus the Goy?
Well, I'd say check out the conversation between Peterson and Shapiro, where they actually have a conversation about Christianity versus Judaism and what this all means. And these are complex, these are really complex problems. It's very hard to have a civilized conversation about these problems. And yet they started a conversation.
That guy, Dr. Deep State, he actually goes into the Hegelian dialect, and he thinks that's a manufactured thing to hit two ideologies together. Essentially it's the idea of both sides are already controlled by the globe, the conspiracy of the elites. But yeah, so it's just interesting you mentioned that.
Well, to a certain extent, yes. But to a certain extent, it comes from simplistic thinking. It comes from othering other people. The interesting thing Shapiro was talking about with Judaism is that the premise of Judaism is that God wanted one example of what a righteous people look like. That the Jews are supposed to be setting an example for everybody else on the earth. That they're not proselytizing, and at the same time, they're not dominating. Now, you certainly have that element in Judaism, where they're not trying to be good people, but they are trying to rule upon all other people because they're chosen. Yeah, it's like the bad monarch, right? That I'm the king, I can do whatever the hell I want. Whereas the good monarch is, I'm the king, I have huge responsibility, I need to set an example for my people. And so Shapiro embraces the philosophy of the good monarch, that the Jews are supposed to be setting an example of what righteousness looks like. Whereas the bad Jews are, well, I'm a Jew, I'm entitled, I'm chosen by God, all other people need to serve me. And boiling it down to just one simple definition misses the incredible nuance to the things that are going on, to just how complex it is. And so if you view Shapiro as an enemy, as opposed to a human being who has his own thoughts and you'll disagree on some things, you'll agree on others. If you view him as the enemy, that's the Hegelian dialectic. Again, now you've just got two blind forces battling it out, and they don't even know what they're fighting about anymore. And they both accuse the other of holding positions that the other does not actually hold. And so, yeah, this can be exploited by profiteers, easily exploited by profiteers. It can even be drummed up by profiteers. But it's also just a natural human tendency, which I think it's up to each one of us to overcome that, to not fall into that simplistic trap. Well, I don't believe Shapiro said, Trevor says Shapiro, nationalism for me, but not for thee. I don't believe Shapiro actually says that. The way he orchestrated the idea was, what he likes about Judaism is that it's an idea first. It's an idea that gives you a sense of identity. And that's what he likes about America. America is a set of ideas, and these ideas provide the identity of American.
Someone needs to introduce him to a video by Alternative Hypothesis called "The Conceived in White Nationalism."
Well, there's an element of that, absolutely. America was a WASP Protestant country when it first began. Yeah, I know that's redundant, but still. And yet, it was a Protestant country that had black slaves. So there's a foundational instability, which you're going to find with any system. Nothing is ever perfect. And so there's an issue. Yeah, you had blacks in America from the very, very early days. And if there was a time to deport the blacks, it was after the Civil War. It is far, far too late now to do that. You also had problems with, it was a WASP country that also had Irish slaves, Irish Catholic.
Yeah.
So, now, again, nothing is ever perfect. You go back to any era, there was no era where you could say, yes, this is where Britain was perfect. This is where only British people lived in Britain. And, well, no, it's never been that way. You always had intermarriage between the monarchies. You had the Normans invading. You had the Irish and the Welsh and the Scots. And before you had the Scots, you had the Picts and the Romans. And like every era of history, you have these very complex situations. And if you try and boil it down to something very simplistic and declarative, you fall into that Hegelian dialectic once more. Now, I don't say this. Listen, Alternative Hypothesis. It's not a secret that his name's Ryan Falk, is it? Like, I mean, his internet name.
No, he has a channel called Ryan Falk. I mean, I think pretty much everyone knows.
Yeah, okay. I don't want to call him Alternative. That sounds silly. I want to call him Ryan.
No,
It's not his real name either, but it's his internet handle. Now, I'm not saying any of this to dismiss what Ryan Falk is pointing out. In fact, I think all of this is a crucial bit of history that you need to know. I think it's crucial that you understand how people have been expelled from regions in the past in the desire to create a coherent community, because community and identity are very, very crucial. I don't think it's remotely controversial to say that the current migrant wave in Europe needs to be deported yesterday. They do not belong there, and they have no interest in becoming European, if they even could. They need to go. That said, that's a very easy cut and dried situation. What about the Anglos and the Saxons? What about the Picts? What about the Gauls? What about the Germanic tribes? What about the Native Americans? You know, like all 20 different tribes of Native Americans, because they're not one homogenous group either. So I think that like what Falk talks about is something that if you're going to talk about this intelligently, you need to know this history. You can't shy away from harsh truth. But the past is not a map towards the future. You need to know where you came from, but where you came from is not necessarily where you should go.
Not to interject too difficultly, but I'd also say one of the significant problems you see with a lot of the alt-right types and the Spencer types, they're offering solutions that could only work in the past context, whereas solutions for the present, it's like, this is what I try to tell people, what's happened in history has gone by step by step by step. You can't reverse several steps when history occurs in singular points. You have to go, like, let's say, for example, the current problem with the European situation is the huge clash of migrants coming from the Middle East. So you can't say, oh, I'm a white nationalist in England, we're going to deport all the blacks and Pakis, when you still haven't solved the current situation of what you've got. Then you can step it back. It's like they seem to miss, they missed the forest for the trees.
What do you mean you have to resolve the current situation?
Well, when a lot of these types would say they want to have a white ethno-nationalist state, it seems like they're jumping the entire gun where they seem to miss current problems. So, for example, I think when did the migrant crisis occur? That was That was after Libya, if I remember correctly, after Clinton fucking killed him.
It's been happening in a low simmer for a while now, but
low simmer,
maybe 8 years ago, maybe is when it like really
The
started to
massive
pick
bulk of that, would say. You can't solve, if you haven't solved that issue, you can't sort of speculate what you can do 3 or 4 moves down the line. You can have ideas, but again, they're just ideas.
I'm not sure I understand what issue you mean. We have to resolve the war in. What do you mean? What's the issue that we have to resolve?
Well, I'll toss one example, is that a coherent vision for the future needs to be addressing how we resolve the breakdown between the sexes. This is such an absolutely crucial component. Guys, I've been formulating. I'm thinking about writing a post called "Separating the Wheat from the Chaff: Moving Towards a Sane Immigration Policy." Basically, it's a white paper that maybe 200 people will read. But I do want to address these issues without providing a utopian solution. That if we lived in the perfect world, this plan would work. Too bad that we don't. And I've seen this proposed many a time. I would address why I don't think this is a solution: the Balkanization of America.
Well, I don't know. I mean, to my mind, if you're talking about the first problem we need to solve is the gender relations.
I didn't say that. We need to solve all of these at the same time. If your car's not working, you don't start by solving the problem that it has no gasoline while you have no tires on it. You need to solve all those damn problems.
If the idea is to solve all the problems, I think the only thing that could do that is an authoritarian, basically straight up military regime, a la fascist style, but I don't know.
How does that come about?
Problems are not top down. Most of these problems are bottom up. Solving the individual is a huge aspect with all these. The people are just so incredibly broken right now. The fact, like one of the foundational reasons that all these alt-right solutions are doomed to failure is because the alt-right it's a hammer looking for nails. Okay, the alt-right is its primary nature is the vitriolic argument, which is only good if you're winning debate points.
Well, I'd say I'm not sure if what you said is correct. The problems do come from the bottom. I think a lot of problems are fermented at the top, but the solutions would have to come from the top. I don't think you can expect the mass of people to solve their own problems or to correct society unless things get really bad. But
well, leadership. But you cannot force people to be moral. You can force people to be obedient, but you can't force them to be moral. You can't force people to be courageous. You can make not doing the courageous thing scarier than doing the courageous thing, but you can't force people to be courageous.
Well, certainly I think you need a leader who is actively fighting evil and setting an example. And the leaders that we got are doing the opposite of that. So, I mean, to me, if you're going to try and reform the mass of humanity, you're going to need a strong leader who does not allow the kind of stuff that goes on in the media and who actively helps a positive lifestyle, who is I guess a beacon of light for these virtues.
Well, isn't Trump already doing that technically?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't think I would tell anyone to have Trump as a role model, but
Well, no, it's not. It's not that he's a role model. It's just that he is very presence is shaking things up. There was this interesting video on Reason TV where they point out that Trump's presence in the White House has disillusioned the power of the state in our minds.
Well, and you know, this is an aspect of the new idea revolution as well. I think we might be developing a new relationship to what the state is. So if you look at the medieval era was characterized by rule by divine monarch. So the king was just the king, and nobody questioned that he was the king. You know, like that joke from Monty Python, I didn't vote for you. Nobody would have said that in medieval times. It was just it would have been ridiculous to say that. And at the same time, the kings, they were not despots, despite what some people try and argue. For the most part, they weren't. The kings had a understanding of noblesse oblige, which is, I like to call myself a Catholic medievalist. And that pyramid is actually a vast oversimplification. An oversimplification that made sense to the Enlightenment mind. And the Enlightenment mind was that we need a state, we need a Leviathan, because somebody's got to build the roads after all. You know, libertarians been trying for 50 years to figure out who would build the roads. They still don't know the answer. And yeah, guys, I'm trolling there. But we understood the state as an inevitability, as this. The state had just as much power as the king did, except it was, and the state was never going to go away, and yet we got to choose it, which is a contradiction, if you think about it. That we get to choose who governs over us, but we don't get to choose whether or not we are governed over. So you wind up with a separation, which you never had in the medieval system. You have the separation of the executive legislative branch and the civil service. I think we're entering something new right now. This is one thing that Trump has done. He has thrown a spanner into the mix. I sound like a frickin' Brit. He's thrown a monkey wrench into the gears.
That's okay.
Where all of a sudden, and this is happening, it's no accident this is happening at the same time that the internet is undermining media. The importance of the Fifth Estate is very old. Okay, it's an Enlightenment idea that the journalists keep the state honest. And the journalists, they're independent from the state, but in the same way, it's like this, the Fifth Estate. The internet's thrown that into chaos. So since 1950, journalism has gone from, I forget the numbers exactly, but there's something like 150 different journalistic outfits in 1950. These days, there's 7. So it's all, on the one hand, the journalists are more and more controlled by a few, and at the same time, the internet explodes, completely undermining the whole concept of journalism. And at the same time this is happening, the concept of the Fifth Estate is being destroyed. The same time as this is happening, the concept of the First Estate, right? The king and the nobles are the First Estate, I believe. Trump is destroying the concept of governance. All of a sudden, everybody that looks at the government sees factions fighting with each other, none of them who have control. The very concept of government is not what we thought it was anymore. So this is a shift just as big as the shift from the medieval divine right of monarchs to the consent of the governed. And this is, when I'm disagreeing with the alt-right, be it Richard Spencer or Ryan Falk or what have you, I'm not actually disagreeing with them. What I'm saying is that there's the foundational grammar of their conversation is that of consent of the governed. Even when you look at libertarians and anarcho-capitalists, it's this, well, if it's the consent of the governed, then we can just get rid of the state. It's still speaking that same language. And I think there's a major, major change happening right now. Again, this many-to-many communication technology of the internet and the instantaneous travel anywhere on the planet. These are absolute game changers. They completely change everything. And we don't even know how they've changed things. We're only beginning to understand. And the internet is still very much in its infancy. The things I don't like about the internet are growing pains. The fact that the internet tends to turn people into assholes. You know, you give somebody anonymity and the ability to talk to anybody on the planet, and the first thing they do is find some celebrity and tweet shit talk at them. This is just one of the growing pains of the internet. We're still figuring out how to deal with this ability. And listen, I'm as guilty as anybody else of getting into these arguments with people. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about right there. You know, people are far ruder on the internet than they ever would be in real life. They're far more unpleasant. And I think we've all done that. We've all acted like a douche on the internet because we could at some point.
I find it's more fun to just be persistent and consistent.
The one anonymous guy who goes around calling people niggers on the internet could actually be nice to people in real life.
Well, it probably is.
I'm not that nice to people in real life. I don't know if you're talking about me, but you know, guilty as charged if you were.
Nah.
So we've been going for a couple hours now. I think it's a good time to shut down the stream.
Is that it? Because I was going to ask, did you get through all of your notes on your for the show?
Oh no, I still have like a page.
Well, I mean, you can shut it down if you want. I mean, I was curious to know if there was like what was on your mind for tonight. But if you want to, I would ask you to like read it through. But if you want to shut down, that's fine.
Oh, I'm going to save them for another time. That's the beautiful thing about doing the live stream is I don't need to have a completely coherent plan for what I'm going to say. Yeah, I'm not writing an essay on a live stream. It's not beginning, middle, conclusion. It gives me the opportunity to really explore ideas and see where they go. And a lot of the stuff I'm still trying to figure out. There's a lot of stuff I don't know enough yet. But if I can... Actually, this is another example of things shifting. See, it used to be that, you know, publish or die is kind of the thing that you have to deal with if you're a PhD. But if your idea is half formed, should you wait to publish? Because if you wait, somebody else might publish before you. Or do you publish too early and your idea is half formed and people reject it? The internet is accelerating the rate of communication. It's changing the nature of books. Books aren't what they used to be anymore. Like a book from 1800 was an internet message board, just a lot slower. So instead of just writing 50 words about your opinion on something, you'd write 50,000, and you'd only got to post every couple of years. And likewise, though, if you write 50,000 words, it's a lot harder to find an audience these days than if you write 50 words. Now, there's good things about that and bad things about it, but I think that by doing these live streams, even though I don't have conclusions for all these ideas, but me working through them, me speaking through them, and I think a lot of you guys, I think you guys are sharp enough to catch what I'm tossing out there, even though I haven't wrapped it in a pretty package yet. I think this accelerates the rate of social discourse. Which, I mean, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it's a thing. It's something. I don't know. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, on something like a Hangout, you're not just presenting an idea, you're having it debated with several other people. You're not seeing an idea get spewed out, you're seeing an idea get debated, which is more interesting.
I think the big thing is look for the new patterns that are forming, because there is a lot of very good stuff happening. And yeah, there's some silver lining to this cloud, but it's kind of a weird path we all got to walk. So you guys got any last thoughts?
Well, I don't know how this happened, but the chat has been having a fucking aneurysm about universal basic income for like 2 hours. I don't know how this happened. I don't even think you mentioned this, but you want to like address the Civil War with your thoughts on universal basic income? I'm sure you probably talked about it before, but apparently
I don't think I have, just because here's the thing, the UBI, on the one hand, it's an idea that would work wonderfully on paper. So I guess that means I'm a neo-Nazi. Oh man, that people's inability to understand what on paper means. It's going to fail for 2 reasons. Number one's the political reason that the current way things are set up, you'll never see it implemented properly. The idea of UBI is that you give everybody a basic minimum income. They get a check from the government. Everybody gets a check from the government for $400. That makes sure that nobody starves to death. But at the same time, we eliminate minimum wage, we eliminate welfare, we eliminate absolutely all the other entitlement programs. So everybody has the same opportunity, and we make sure nobody starves, but you can still go and work. You might only get $1 an hour, but it's $400 a month plus $1 an hour. Now, on the one hand, this won't work because it's not in the interest. Even if we tried to implement this, it's not in the interest of the bureaucracy to eliminate bureaucratic jobs. So all these other entitlement programs would still be there. They might be modified a little bit, but you wind up with something way more simple, or sorry, way more complex. It's not going to simplify it. It's going to wind up making it more complex because there's individuals who benefit. You know, there's concentrated benefits, diffuse costs. So the bureaucracy is going to take advantage of it. That's number one. Number two is that man needs work for moral dignity. The UBI, most people that go on UBI, well, I mean, like everybody would be getting it. But when you give people welfare, very few people take advantage of that welfare to work. In theory, they all should. It's sort of like if you talk to anybody that's been through a very difficult disease, sometimes if you speak to them privately, they'll say, you know what just drives me up the wall is you have all these healthy people. Here I am, my body's falling apart. I have to go through all these painful medical procedures, etc. And I'm still getting up every morning and doing everything I can. And I hate the fact that my body's letting me down. And then I look at all these other people with healthy bodies and they're just wasting it. Without suffering, there's no growth. And so a lot of people on UBI would not take advantage of it to build a business or anything like that. They would sit around and play video games and smoke pot and just become destructive degenerates.
Or as Beckloff puts it, they get bored and open up the Hellraiser box.
UBI, like in the Homo economicus model, it makes perfect sense. We stop people from starving and we eliminate welfare. Well, no, this is just going to be welfare cranked up to 11. Right now we have a welfare class, and that's bad enough. Now everybody is going to be that potential welfare class. And the amount of spiritual destruction will be amazing. Not to mention the amount of physical destruction, because when people sit around playing World of Warcraft and smoking pot, eventually they get bored of World of Warcraft and they need to go take a bottle of lighter fluid and set fire to a business or something like that. So it's not even if you were just strictly materialist, eugenic, this will just stop the retards from breeding, and the 1% that can overcome addiction will go be productive. No, like this 99% that are useless will become destructive. So it's just no end of ugliness coming out from it.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at this picture that I don't know who's posting these pictures in like the video.
Oh, that's
it's like human reasons to work.
Yeah, this is an argument for why we need a basic universal income, because if people aren't working just to live, having money to live, they can have self-improvement.
Yeah, but it's very hard to engage in self-improvement without a reason, a physical demand to self-improve.
Yeah, no, you got to laugh when you're seeing like as soon as the money to live goes away, like self-improvement becomes like a big reason to work. And I'm like, like almost 40% of the U.S. is like obese. So I'm like, these people aren't suddenly going to start hitting the gym because they don't have to go to work anymore. They're just going to get fucking fatter. Like, I don't know who makes a communist probably made that fucking chart. I just don't know who makes these charts. Like,
that was probably an R9K. I've seen a lot of those troll images where they'll have a Chad as the welfare recipient and then the wage slave. And it's like, we've got as the welfare recipient, I can enjoy more tendies and piano lessons because that's clearly what all they do. while you wage your work, like that was where a lot of the old where some of the new Pepe stuff came from before he got cucked into Kekistan. But good old R9K.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I talked to this one. I remember having a debate with a communist, and he was like, he told me about how he went on a hike and everyone was sharing their trail mix, and he was like, just imagine if we have our communist utopia where we'll all be sharing our trail mix. And it's like, dude, a fucking hike probably filled with white people isn't the same as like having a communist society. It's the same as these people who make these charts. It's like they have this childish view of like humanity, of like, oh, suddenly we're going to be a society of Da Vinci's and
they have a very inflated opinion of themselves. Let me be frank. I am motivated to buy damn video games. Okay, like I was mentioning Soma. I actually do want to get that video game.
Oh, I just got it recently. It's very good.
Yeah, and it's only I think it's like $30 Canadian or something like that. And I'm kind of looking at my finances right now. It's like, well, I've got some stuff I need to pay for, and I'm not going to pay for it just yet. Yeah, so that kind of motivates me to, I've got some feelers out there right now to see if there's a, short-term gig somewhere or what have you. That's the sort of stuff, even if I'm not worried about starving, which at present I have in the past. I'm not worried right now about starving. But see, I've still got that, but like just pure materialism. I want to get some fancy rims for my car, guys. So you better like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah, give those super chats so Aurini can look fly while he's driving around town.
I gotta get some spinners and a tweeter for the exhaust pipe. I got a dual exhaust, so I'll get two of like harmonic frequency. Jeez, oh my god, how wigger would that be? You remember those tweeters that the black people were putting on their cars? It was this annoying whistle that they welded into their exhaust, so cars going by would just squeal constantly and piss everybody off. Like I'm going to be a white guy. I'm going to get a 4/5 harmonic balance.
No, the rednecks would do that at my high school. They would take the mufflers off so the cars were like really fucking loud. At least that's what I heard. I mean, hell, I don't know what they were doing, but their cars were really loud compared to normal cars. And I remember one of my friends always joked that they were doing it to show off how big of a dick they got. And I was like, yeah, that's what it felt like, just drawing attention to themselves.
No, I want to get some nice summer rims with summer tires on it, and a new paint job, and there's some mechanical work. It's a wonderful car that I can register as an antique next year, which I'm planning to do. Most people, and the thing is, I bought the damn thing for $1,700. You know, nobody saw the potential in this thing, but well, yeah, I had a really cool experience when I was getting I had to get a hole. I got a screw in one of my tires. The mechanic said to me, "It's like, this thing is absolutely beautiful. You need to take care of it." But, like, geez, thanks. I can't believe you noticed. Thank you. Compliment.
The fidget spinner. They never get old, do they? The autism spinners.
Yeah, no, I don't know how these trends happen. I mean, I remember Aurini's doing the stream, and he's like, "How the hell do these freaking trends happen? Like, this is like an overnight thing. Like, fidget spinners just became famous like overnight." Yeah, I don't know how this goes on, but I don't know. Maybe it fits into the transhumanist Luciferian conspiracy somehow. I don't know how.
You know what, there's the way chaos theory works, which, no, I haven't studied chaos theory properly. I just know what Ian Malcolm says. But the way it works is that you are going to have blips on the radar every so often. It's when you have a bunch, random data does not look random. Okay, like if you think random data, you basically think like black and white squares that even out to gray. Random data always appears to create patterns. And Luke, I absolutely love that image, by the way. That's absolutely hilarious that you did that. And so it is inevitable. Now, yeah, there was somebody pushing fidget spinners, but alongside fidget spinners, there are probably a dozen other trends that we haven't heard of that were also being pushed. And every so often you get some weird random thing that just sweeps the populace. This is the same reason. This is related to the fact that you're never going to get rid of viruses, right? Because there is this primordial chaos in all complex systems. There is always something unpredictable and unknowable. Nobody could have predicted fidget spinners specifically, but you can predict that something like fidget spinners will happen every so often. That every so often you are going to have a forest fire. You don't know where or when the forest fire will happen, but you know you're going to have one.
Yeah,
I still got that fidget spinner my buddy brought me as well. Here I was, like, I did several live streams talking about how horrible fidget spinners are. My buddy comes up to visit me, and he brings me some cigars, whiskey, and a fidget spinner. Son of a bitch.
I remember when these swooped every playground in the country.
What are those, like, bracelets you snap on?
Tism tape.
Oh,
Yes.
wow. I remember those.
I'm not really old enough to remember those. I remember those vaguely. I remember when I was a little kid, I've seen like a little bit of those, but you know, before my time.
Yeah, only 90s kids will remember this.
Oh, don't. Oh, God, I hate those articles.
The cringe in your toes, you can feel it.
They're so stupid, and they make me feel old. There's nothing positive about those articles whatsoever. Or Pogs. Pogs is another weird thing that swept. Again, I'm showing my age. Do you remember Al Bart? He's back in Pog form.
Pog?
What? I know.
What the hell
like,
is
what was so
Pog?
great about Pogs? I never understood why Pogs worked.
Nothing was great about them. Listen, do what they were. They had these neat little pictures on them, and you could collect the pictures, right? You could like try and collect an entire set of all the, like, these are the Pokemon, but you had like, there were Pogs of everything. Okay, there were the Pog, like the 3.1 series. It's like the same reason Diablo was popular. That game is not fun, but you get to collect item sets. And so everybody was buying them. And so if you didn't buy them, then you couldn't socialize because everybody was playing Pogs during recess. And good Lord, that thing brings back memories. Now, it was not a fun game, but everybody was playing it. So and because you have 14 of the 16, you're going to keep buying more until you get the 2 that you're missing.
No, you know what these Pog things remind me of? I think I think they're in the chat. Yeah, there's little like button things. They remind me of those Funkos. Have you seen them? They're those incredibly ugly bobblehead-looking things that don't actually
Oh
bobble.
God. Oh, the Funko.
Get a picture of the Funkos. They're everywhere. Like they're pretty much in like every store that I go into, like
Oh, yeah.
Walmart, Hot Topic, like any store that isn't like a clothes or grocery store.
Yeah, they're practically the AIDS of the nerds community. Just
Yeah, do you
fucking
see
everywhere.
Marie? They're like these extremely ugly bobbleheads.
She's taking a self. Who like? You know, I don't even want to know who the pink one is. I don't need to pollute my brain.
Oh, that's Gwen Poole. Hey, I'm sorry, I polluted your brain.
Ugh.
Sorry, I tainted you there.
I feel like my mother when I show her an internet video.
Yeah, this is how you play Pog. You stack them up and then you knock them over, and the ones that fall into a certain area you get to keep.
What?
Wow, that's
Yeah.
retarded.
Play it?
That's the game. It's a retard. That's it.
Jesus
And
Christ.
was playing it, and some people were like, you could get the slammer is what you knock down. Some people have these giant metal slammers, and it was absolutely ridiculous. It
Just
is
play fucking marbles.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, I used to play marbles. Like, what the hell's going on with these kids playing
I think
Pog?
I think Pokemon and Beyblades is a step
Oh
above
God,
this.
Eurocraft is asking me if I'll do unboxing videos of shit people send me. You know what? I would, because you guys are hilarious, and that would be pretty funny. I don't have a PO box right now though, so maybe in the future. I'll be honest. Who is that guy that does the bad Kickstarter crap videos? He also does the bad unboxings where people like send him. And this was the funniest thing I ever saw. Somebody sent him a bottle of coyote urine. Apparently, you can order bottles of coyote urine online. And I thought it would be the funniest prank. Because I like surreal humor, just to buy bottles of coyote urine for people. Like either doing it for your friends as a prank, or if there's somebody you really don't like, just every month buy them a bottle of coyote urine.
Jesus Christ.
and wait for them to slowly go insane.
How the fuck did anyone even get coyote urine in the first place?
How do you think?
I don't know. Wouldn't they just assume it's like your urine, like Aurini? I'm not sure. Would you have to specify it? You have a label on the coyote urine vial.
Yeah, like if you spread it around your property, it keeps coyotes away or something like that. So there's a reason for it, but
who needs to keep coyotes away that badly to buy coyote urine?
Well, I sent a picture to Luke of something a lot worse than that.
Oh God.
Yeah, I think that might be a great setup for a contemporary novel where for no reason the protagonist just has some ex-girlfriend or something that every month she sends him random weird shit. Like, here's a perfectly preserved crab in formaldehyde. Here's a bottle of coyote urine.
Oh man, I remember there was this one time I sent my dad something for Christmas. I didn't tell him what it was because it was supposed to be a surprise, but I sent him a replicated page of the Necronomicon. So it was like it had all this like crazy made up writing on it and had this drawing of like Dagon like possessing a human, and it looked extremely like satanic and evil, right? Like, but it was just fake. It was just like some bullshit I found on Etsy, and I called my dad because I wanted to see if he'd got the gift. And when I say, hey, did you get the gift yet? And he was like, oh yeah. When I opened it up, I dropped it because I thought he didn't know it was from me. So he thought he just got some like random satanic, shit from like, it was like a mail mix up and he got some, pages from the fucking Satanic Bible or something, So yeah, don't do that to your family members is the moral of the story. Don't send them demonic shit. I think he only figured out it was from me because it had a note attached to it, said like from Sean or something. So, well,
let's see. Well, we're still going apparently, so we'll see. Dashing Rogue wanted to join.
Oh, are we still going? You said you'd wrap it up, and then I asked you the universal basic income. I should have asked you that.
Massive derailment. Back on track, ladies and gentlemen.
I need to do an analysis of the metrics on my videos to see if I go too long. I worry that, like right now, I got all you good folks listening, but I worry if I go too long, people will look at it tomorrow and say, I don't feel like listening to 3 hours of bullshit. But like you don't really have to listen to all 3 hours. You can listen to it until it's time to go to work, or your girlfriend shows up, or you get your shipment of fidget spinners. You know, you can listen as long as you want. But I kind of worry that if the video is too long, people won't want to listen.
Hmm.
So like an hour and a half is nice and digestible.
Like they'll be intimidated. I don't know. You could just keep ending the stream and restarting it. We could just go 24-hour marathon. Just end it every half an hour and a half, and then restart it.
Intermission breaks, beer breaks.
Yeah, do a 20-minute. Well, I think some of the old Kubrick films, Spartacus still does that. You can't buy an original, or you can't buy a Blu-ray copy without the 20-minute intermission.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I have a bad habit of drinking.
From Luke.
I have a bad habit of drinking when I'm like on these like Google Hangouts with like my friends. Usually they're not like recorded, so I'm just getting more and more intoxicated as this goes on because I have like wine bottles next to me. Oh, what?
I drank a whole thing of
What's
vodka.
poison tonight?
No, I'm not gonna get alcohol poisoning because the wine bottle's almost empty.
No, I said, what's your poison? What are you drinking?
Oh shit! What is it? Cabernet Sauvignon from Australia, southeastern Australia.
Good taste.
Jacobs Creek. Yeah, well, I bought this specific. Oh shit! I wasn't supposed to drink it all because I wanted to save it for somebody. But anyways,
that's what we all get.
You just have to buy more. You're in
No
America.
regrets. Yeah.
Yeah, the Cabernet Sauvignon has a romantic story behind it, so I felt predisposed to getting it.
Hey, wait, Dashing Rogue, you had something to contribute specifically.
Oh yes. The whole thing about the transhumanist agenda shit. I think I told you guys about cybernetics, the true meaning of what cybernetics is. I also cybernetics stands for kybernesis. It's the original Greek word that we get cybernetics from, and kybernesis means the steerman. Now, what exactly that means is it's like a boatsman who steers according to the different things that are outside of its control. So oftentimes what that would mean is, in a dialectical sense, is, well, are you far right and being a fascist, or are you a far leftist and being a communist? You know, are you authoritarian right, authoritarian left? You have to break out of those that paradigm, if you will, that Cartesian coordinate system. Because if you let other people define your ideas, which again I think is going to start happening in the future, I think there's going to be a huge problem with the fifth estate, the one that's the news. I think the news is going to get supplanted by popular opinion and populism. I think we're going to have this whole high school state of mind of the cool kids clique and the nerds and all those other people. They're all going to have their own voting base. I think that's what's going to happen, and they're going to be people who are setting trends and social norms, and that is where the powers that be want. They want to buy off the roaming millennials. They want to buy off the Spencers of the world. They want to buy off these people, and they can be bought off. Aurini stated that we're in a post-scarcity world. That is not true. We're in a post-need world, but we're not in a post-want world. We have a lot of...
I didn't need to go to the washroom. I'll toss this in. Speaking of beer breaks, there's a line in the culture novels by Ian M. Banks, which I recommend. They're great novels. I don't agree with his philosophy, but they're great novels, very interesting. But there's a saying, like, the culture is absolutely post-scarcity, okay? And honestly, you want to see transhumanism, you can... First of all, you're born with a whole bunch of drug glands in your brain, so you can get high whenever you feel like it just by, tripping one of your drug glands. You also have a sober up gland if you need to get sober. You can swap sexes at any. It takes about 6 months for your body to do it, but you just decide, well, I feel like being a woman now, and you swap sexes. You're basically immortal until you get bored of living.
Right.
And so there's a saying in the culture that it was so popular that they reinvented money, because every so often there will be something that is exclusive, where like anybody can play a video game, but not everybody can show up for a live concert. And so if there's a live concert that's popular enough, they will reinvent money, which means that people will be so desperate to get into it, they'll be doing political favors, sexual favors, you fucking name it, to get a ticket for this event.
I agree with that. But when we talk about trend,
you will always have scarcity. And that's the thing. Like, this is what I was saying, that I am not currently at threat of starving, but I still want money to buy video games and fidget spinners.
Well said.
So I'm still motivated to work because there's stuff I want to buy.
And with all the mental health crap that's going on, well, I guess I'll just wait till he gets back.
Keep going.
Okay. Well, with all that said, I think it was John Steele, or I can't remember who was on here earlier. I've been tuning in and out. I was on my way home. But with alchemy, one of the things you have to understand is you're transmuting base metals of consciousness, base desires into something higher. You're going from wanting beef jerky right now to transmuting your consciousness and your will into willing to cook filet mignon by yourself. That is what you're doing. That is the method, and well, the purpose of alchemy is to transmute your desires into something that is more meaningful and valuable. So you don't just become a psychotic hedonist who wants to go fuck around. You actually transcend hedonism, I guess Epicurean hedonism, to something more sensible, like Jeremy Bentham's utilitarianism. So instead of choking the chicken now, you save up to go out and meet people. You use your base desires and transmute them into something valuable. That passion that you would get from the lust, the base desire, you would transmute into something positive. You channel your anger into the gym, or the Temple of Iron, as the Golden One would say. Yes. But more to the point, everyone is born human. Okay? So the thing that should really scare you is, what are these people transforming into? That's what you should really be concerned about. Because unless they have some way of creating an artificial womb, I wouldn't really be concerned about or genetic modification. I wouldn't be concerned about that. I would be very concerned about something like Deus Ex. I think the Human Revolution. I think it was a newer one where they start
divided. Well, yeah.
Well, not the. I think it's the third one in the series. I'm not entirely sure, but if they start putting malware that is a bug and sell it as a feature, so people's ideas, let's say, when they connect up to the cybernetic link, I never asked for this. Yeah. Well, you got it.
Well,
Bye-bye.
look at on slight interjection. Look at Total Recall selling fake memories, fake ideas for a price because it's too expensive to go to other places to
I don't
actually
know.
go there.
Honestly, I think the superhero genre, as what it's become in like comics, and I think the personalities on YouTube, not really you, Aurini, but like the video game Let's Players and stuff, and like the kind of like regular talk shows. I think this is very much like the mentality of they're like pretend friends. It's like a pretend connection. Because I've seen my sister do this, and she's like into the fandoms and shit like that. So like she's in the comic fandoms, and like Overwatch was one she's into. And I remember she compared another person to like that we know to an Overwatch character. Like the Overwatch character was real, but she like compared him to she compared real to a fictional character who isn't even like that deep. It's not like she's saying, oh, this guy's similar to, like a very well-known fictional character. She's saying, oh, he's this guy's similar to like what it was like Junkrat or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, that guy doesn't even have a personality. He's literally just like a stereotype, a caricature. And I don't know. To me, it's what I've observed is people just want these fake friends. It's what PewDiePie is. That's why he's got so famous. Is because it's like people can like have a connection with him, and he talks to you like he's your friend. And I think that's why these things have gotten so popular.
Yeah, it's not. This is a point. Not to interject.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I think I know what you're getting at, but devil's advocate here. One of my favorite radio show hosts in Canada, the closest we got to a conservative, he's a libertarian, is Like he mentioned once that, you know what, I'm the guy and I'm here talking in the middle of the night, and this is for all of you long haul truckers that are you're out working by yourself and you don't have any human contact, and I'm your piece of human contact and I'm here for you guys. And that's what we're doing here. Sylvia Lau just said, talk shows are a drag, these live streams are fun. Like, this is about some human contact. And like, I very much enjoy Markiplier's videos. I find him, I genuinely like the guy. He is intelligent, he is fairly smart. He definitely gets.
Wait, who'd you say?
Markiplier.
I broke up with the girl I was in love with over an argument over Markiplier.
I think
this happened.
When he played Soma, he knew what Soma was about. And he exaggerates things a little bit. Every so often I'll get somebody that, somebody that listens to me and they want to talk to me first thing in the morning. And it's like, dude, I'm not sociable first thing in the morning. Okay, I used to, I'd wake up next to a girl and, and she'd be all natter. I'm like, morning time is quiet time, honey. I am not sociable in the morning. I put all my energy into being as sociable and entertaining as possible when I'm doing these live streams, right? I'm on my best behavior. So, Markiplier's a bit exaggerated, but I genuinely like the guy. He is intelligent. He's got an engineering degree, for crying out loud. He definitely understands the subtler aspects to the art of the games he plays, and I like the guy. And the same thing, comparing people to fictional characters, well, that's the point of fiction, is that all fiction speaks to eternal truth. Now, and the difference between good fiction and bad fiction is the bad fiction doesn't, which is why nobody is buying Rey action figures from The Force Awakens, because she's a terrible character. Not because she's female, it's because she's nothing. She's a cipher.
Yeah.
So that said, I think your point is there is cynical formulaic crap sold to kids, and that actually really outrages me when kids shows are garbage. And actually, like my generation, growing up in the 80s, we were the first ones to deal with this formulaic garbage with no redeeming value. Most Saturday morning shows were just there to sell action figures.
Yeah, Transformers, basically. I mean, they killed Optimus Prime off just so they could make another buck on quarter 3.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, like,
people were mad about their fifis.
Yeah.
And then there's the YouTube personalities that are mass market appeal.
Which is kind of, well, I mean, in a way, these people are having their own little cult of personality to a degree. I mean, Markiplier has his fans, PewDiePie has his bros, the Manosphere has its chads and bros and things like that. There are certain people of certain temperaments will follow them, So what's really concerning is how this can be exploited. But at the same time, I mean, like, Overwatch is interesting because Overwatch, the characters are bland enough and people like them enough that they'll make art of them. And they will sort of have this, like, I want to say it's like the expanded universe of Star Wars to a certain degree.
I mean,
by art, you mean Rule 34?
When you get into like writing, like with writing, I mean, I'm trying to learn more about it. But there's the idea of like the flat character and the round character, and the flat character is someone who is basically one note, but who usually ends up as some of the most memorable characters in fiction are like flat characters. For an example, like Sherlock Holmes is a flat character. You know exactly what he's going to do in every situation. He's extremely predictable, but that doesn't mean he's not effective. So with something like Overwatch, it's basically you just get entirely flat characters, but people just gravitate. It's the Breakfast Club thing where people gravitate towards certain personalities, and I think that's what's the appeal of it. And I think a lot of things recognize that because a lot of video games are doing this now. And I think the biggest like Let's Player, like video game players on YouTube they kind of have this thing where they act as like a personality for someone to get to know. That's like the appeal of them.
So let me ask you this then. What do you think?
Luke, fast forward to the part where Markiplier throws his chair across the room.
Oh,
Or that's actually a different video. It's this video game, but it's a different episode.
what I was going to say was that imagine what would happen. Imagine the potential if you put, let's say, you gave Markiplier, I don't know, a sponsorship. Because let's be honest with ourselves, these guys have such unstable income as it stands. To get a corporate sponsorship with, let's say, Coca-Cola or Pepsi, and all they have to do is have Pepsi like in one of their videos. You know, like let's say Davis.
By the way, I really like your product, Wisers.
Exactly. Exactly.
If Wisers wants to sponsor these videos, do it. I'm down for that.
That's exactly my point. I mean, look at the potential of what this is, how this could be played out. You have people who are going to be sponsors for companies that you don't know about. There won't be any disclosure. Look what happened to the atheist cult people, right? They were fucking shilling for a company that was pro free speech with no what the hell was it? They didn't tell about the
Look at him suffer. Look at him suffer during this fucking video game. God bless him for putting himself through this shit. I would never play that damn video game. It looks absolutely miserable. But Mark, that poor bastard, it's so horrible, this game. And yet it's actually a very good game in a way. It's so painful. The game's called Starting Over because you keep getting knocked all the way back to the beginning. But it's, you know, he makes the interesting observation that, there we go. I was mentioning Darkwood, and I've started that game over about a dozen times so far because I'm learning about the game and I'm getting better at the game, and it's like, I could do this better. So there's this funny, like, this game really rubs it in your face that you have to start over, but there is something to be said for starting over and doing better again and again and again and again. So this game actually does have quite a bit of artistic value to it, even though it's a horrific rage game that Markiplier is having an aneurysm while he plays.
It's like a roguelike game. You know what that is?
I can't say I recommend this game. Yeah, it is sort of like a roguelike where you get set, like you die and you start at the beginning all over again.
Only this time you don't die, you just fucking suffer.
Yep. And then he quotes, the creator voices some quote about failure that somebody smarter than him wrote, and it's
You know, if we're gonna keep going, because we didn't wrap the show up at the determined time, I guess. What else? What's the most interesting thing to you on your list of show notes? We should dive into that before.
Well, you know what? We actually touched on one of them just now, discussing the popularity of Let's Players, but it's also the popularity of YouTube personalities. And Luke, you got to turn this off. A, so I don't get flagged, but B, because
It's distracting me.
watching him play this game is very captivating, folks. Go check out those videos. They're fairly recent. I think he started posting them about a month or two ago. Okay, so let me introduce this topic. It is related to the whole why people are popular on the internet bullshit. But one of the things I've run into is that when you try and say to people, they're like, I really like what this person is doing. And either this is somebody I've been studying for a long time, or it's somebody that I have private personal information about. And I'll try and gently warn, because I don't want to start drama. I know lately it seems like it's nothing but drama, and I've been involved in that. My apologies. I don't want to start drama. So I'll try and gently say to the person, well, listen, I'm not saying he doesn't do good stuff or he's not right about this particular thing, but this individual has some darker patterns of behavior. And so I'd be very careful. Like, listen, if Hitler says 2 + 2 = 4, 2 + 2 still equals 4, even though Hitler said it. But there's certain people that, and again, I'm not talking about anybody on this screen right here. Who's an example that's, where you can all imagine the YouTube celebrity guy that pretends to be super. I know pickup artists. These are the best ones. The pickup artists convince you that they're successful with women, but anybody that knows about women will tell you no, like 99% of what these guys teach you is bullshit. So I was thinking about the levels of rhetoric.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I broke them into 4 different levels of rhetoric. And so the problem is that if you criticize these people, their fans, the fan says, well, you're just jelly. You're just jealous that they're more popular than you are. You're just jealous because they're cooler and they get more tail or whatever it might be. When it's like, no, he's really not a good rapper. I'm not fucking jealous. He's just a shitty rapper.
There'll be those who will say, well, why are you bringing it up? Why don't you keep your opinion to yourself? You have nothing good to say. You have nothing good constructive criticism, which that in itself, I mean, that's rhetoric right there.
So there's 4 levels that I was thinking, and I'm still playing with this idea. So the level 1 is outward success. The archetype of this would be the scammy salesman that spends all of his money. He has a leased car and he has a fancy suit he wears and all of this. He's all about the trappings of success. He wants to look successful, and most people will see that guy and say, wow, he's driving a brand new car. He must be rich. That means he's a really good salesman. That means I can trust him. But really, he's just going in debt for all of this. It's all style, no substance whatsoever. All right, and that guy is going to go sell you a product. He doesn't care what he's selling. He's just dressing this way to better manipulate people. No integrity whatsoever, just absolute flim-flam man. And a lot of people, if somebody that's living humbly, somebody that's living within their means, who actually has a higher net worth than this guy, their car won't be as nice. And if you try and say, well, that guy just leased it. He doesn't own it. He just leased it. Well, you're just jealous of him. Well, okay. The next level, level 2, is where you have integrity and honesty. This is where, like, if you're a salesman, you don't lie about the product. Level 1 will lie about the product, and he'll just try and scam you. He doesn't care. It might be a great product, might be a terrible. He doesn't care. He's just going to try and scam you into it. Level 2 will be honest. There's no bullshit with him. He keeps his promises. And so he develops a reputation over time as being an honest businessman. Level 3 is where you have concern and caring for your audience or for your clientele, where you try and make it a good product. So level 2 will sell you anything. I could...
The level 2s are sellouts.
Exactly. I could make more money selling pornography than doing what I'm doing right now. And I've thought about it. I'm a good filmmaker. I'm not a Kubrick. Okay, I'm not going to claim I'm a Kubrick, but I can put together a competent porn movie, no problem. And I'm a creative person. Okay, I could write erotica if I wanted to. Except, is that good for people? Should I take my finite time on Earth and create? Is this making people's lives better?
It is. It can be. Again, we talked about trendsetters, and we're talking about erotica, base levels of consciousness. Everyone has them. Everyone has the urge to reproduce. Fight, flee, reproduce are the base levels of consciousness. If you could somehow set a trend that women will like certain types of men who have, let's say, the archetypical hero in your stories, if you could get people to like that, you could set trends to make people like the weird guy or that creepy guy in the corner who smokes cigars and, would probably, you want to keep him away from your sister. You could set those trends. You have that ability, Well,
and actually, it's Luke, you're a genius for putting the Ferengi up. So you can actually, all of this, I'm using the salesman as a metaphor because I don't want to name specific names on YouTube because people will just say I'm jealous. But the interesting thing is all of these rules of capitalism Like, number one, if you want to succeed, you need to look successful. Dress for the job that you want, not the job that you have. But at the same time, you should be consistent in what you're doing. You should have integrity. You should develop a reputation for being honest. Now, level 3 is, well, I'm going to be honest, but also I want to sell a good product, not an addictive product, but a good product. And then level 4 is doing it for the sake of truth, of doing it for God, of doing it for that higher purpose. And level 4 will embody all the lower levels. But here's the thing, the flim-flam man will be better at Flash than anybody else. The pure capitalist will be better at having an honest, like if you're genuine and caring, you might run into circumstances where you can't fulfill a contract. Because you, like, for whatever reason, like, you know what, I have to tell you, honestly, I cannot do this anymore. So let's make sure that we both walk away. Like, I'm not going to take your house or your shirt. I want us to walk away fair. You will occasionally break a contract because it's the right thing to do. Whereas the pure capitalist will still sell you the bullshit.
Well, to also be to be fair, you may break the contract, but you also will probably destroy your reputation. You know, the flim flam art, and that's another thing that's scary. I mean, how many times has Mr. Medicare gotten rid of his identity, but we still call him Jim? Imagine people walking away from, let's say, a con on the internet, and then coming up 5 or 6 years later with a different name and a deeper voice, and you won't be able to recognize them. You know? And selling you the same shit over and over again. Being a con artist, like what Nia, well, dare I say her name, Sarkeesian. You know? First it was what was it, telemarketing or something? Timeshares or some shit. And now she's doing feminism.
Actually, I'd say that she's an example of level 2. She gave people exactly what she promised. Nobody that bought from her is upset. They all got their videos attacking masculinity. The thing is that none of these videos were good. None of them were legitimate critiques of video games. And ultimately, it was all about her making the Benjamin. She doesn't believe in any of it. Because how could you? It's all bullshit. So she doesn't have concern for her audience. She doesn't feel a moral obligation to her audience, but she keeps her word. Now, you could point out that it took her a little bit longer, but like, well, sometimes things take longer. People are not upset. If you are delivering a product, like I was originally wanting to do more of these longer videos, but I think I haven't lost anybody on Patreon over that, which leads me to believe that people understand. Like, I thought I could do more of them than I actually can. So, like, nobody's angry. Nobody feels betrayed. Here's on the left, there's the first rule of acquisition. Once you have their money, you never give it back.
The left?
On the far left there.
Oh.
Now, see, here's the thing. That's somebody that has integrity and reputation, but no concern or caring. There are times when you've been hired to do something and you think you can do the project, but as things develop, it's, no, this project is beyond my capacity. And you go to the person and say, you know what, listen, let me refund the money. You know, I'm sorry, this did not work out. I cannot complete this. My apologies. I will do right by you. I'll refund the money. See, that's breaking the contract, or that's going to impact your reputation. Because you screwed this project up, because you admitted that you screwed it up, because you only want to deliver a good product.
I see. That makes sense.
And so people, the issue is that you have people operating where they can only see the first level of success. So if you live within your means and you don't have a brand new BMW because you can't afford one, they'll think you're poorer than the idiot with a brand new BMW. Whereas if you know what you're looking at, you'll see the guy with the brand new BMW and say, well, how the fuck does he afford that? That dumbass is massively in debt. He's a flim-flam man.
Glamour and vice. To go back to magic for a second, glamour. If you look up what glamour comes from the same word, grammar. What was that chick on fucking Game of Thrones? The one that, the redhead, Melisandre? Yeah, I don't know. Spoilers for anybody who hasn't read or seen the whole fucking show. She uses glamour to sell you what you think you're gonna get from her. Well, she's ugly, okay, but it's all glamour. That's what you have. And to bring up the Mr. Medicare again, I think we're gonna have people like him who are gonna have integrity and go after people who are con artists and hucksters, the pimps and whores, to quote John Collins, the pimps.
Here's the thing about Medicare. He's actually working at the 4th level, which is actually, who was it? Yeah, Leslie just nailed that in the comments. Level 4 is authenticity, is being true to yourself and God. And see, Medicare is those things. If you know what he is. Now, you have a lot of fans of Medicare that they think he's the ultimate judge. This is what I was saying. Why the hell are all of these political people asking Medicare to arbitrate their disagreements? He's not a judge. He is not lawful neutral. He is, at best, he's chaotic good. And I'm not even sure about that.
He's beyond good and evil.
Can I just say, this is the point I was going to add on to Jolly's, not Jolly, Dashing's point. Because this was something I think me, you, and Steele Davis were talking about on a post. No, actually, it wasn't a post show. It was just after your stream with Roosh, when people are sort of, they want to be Jim's best friend. They like that idea.
Medicare
they think they can. He's a force. That's the best way of describing him. He's the force of, if there's cringe, he's going to laugh at it. And he's someone who is he is an idiot. If you know what that is, someone who used to browse Encyclopedia Dramatica. If there's cringe, if there is lols to be mined, he will mine them. It doesn't fucking matter if it burns all the trees around it. He will do it regardless.
Jim is riding a very dangerous tiger. The moment that Mr. Medicare takes himself seriously is the moment that Medicare becomes the ultimate king of cringe. Now, this is not Jim. Jim's just a man. But Medicare is as you said, a force, a phenomenon. He's the final boss of the internet. He is pure chaos. And the thing is, he has great integrity. He does not try, and he's not serious. He can't be serious. By definition, Medicare cannot be serious and cannot stand for anything. He is 100% corrosive, which is his purpose, and that's why we love him. Now, some people look at Medicare and they mistake the outward success, the first level. They only see the first level. He's really popular. He's really cool on the internet. He must be the second coming of Christ. He must be trustworthy. He must be noble and paladin. No. He's none of those. He is what he is. He has great integrity in being Medicare.
He's Batman. He's not Bruce Wayne. He's Batman.
The best way to describe him, no, he's more like the Joker. He tries every person with the same slanted hammer.
Yeah,
but that's only if there's lols to be found. That's the whole point. If there's someone who is normal, it's almost like he doesn't smell anything and he walks on to the next person. That's the best way to describe it.
I don't know if I got a beat on Mr. Medicare, because he does, he seems to be a complete nihilist, because he's against all sorts of political activism, and he just thinks all of it is dumb, as that conversation with Sargon.
No, you're right. Medicare is a nihilist. Jim isn't. Medicare is.
We don't. Well, to be quite honest, exactly. We don't know. It's all a facade. Who is that man behind the mask?
Listen, there's enough humanity that seeps through that I can tell you that Jim is a pretty solid guy. You'd be lucky to call Jim a friend.
Yeah, it's
no man's friend.
There's certainly
he is more than the tsunami, the divine wind that protected Japan from the Chinese. That's not your friend. It might have been useful this time. It's not your fucking friend.
No, I agree with him. Medicare is a wild card if I've ever seen anyone. Medicare is basically chaotic neutral, the alignment. He's completely unpredictable. He'll turn on you in an instant, but I don't know. Like, he seems to be, to me at least, a man of like who is outraged by injustice, because that's pretty much what his whole channel is.
Yeah.
Of him getting angered over things and making videos on them. I think there is a core of morality to him.
Yeah, he's purely reactionary. He doesn't create anything. He observes what's been made and sort of passes judgment.
You know
Like,
what?
if you look at his earlier stuff, because I feel like the main problem with America now seems to be, you could basically write an Encyclopedia Dramatica article and it'd be word for word what he says. If you watch some of his earlier stuff where he used to flame people, it was more interesting because it was almost just general shit posting. But now I don't think that there's anything too much interesting with him. Oh, Davis has disappeared. So, but you gonna make a point, Jolly?
No, I'm just not sure. I mean, I'm not. I mean,
I think the cult around Medica is interesting because there's certainly a cult, but it's not as cringy as, say, Peterson's cult.
Oh, Peterson's cult isn't cringy. Just the loudest elements are. They always are.
Well, Medicare is like 100% critique, though. He doesn't have like a.
Yeah, that's the whole point of them.
There's a Jungian concept called animus or anima possession, which this is what happens when you have a bad relationship with the opposite sex. Now, this is not, and so a woman will suffer animus possession, which is what the woman on Channel 4 arguing with Peterson, that was a masculine argumentative thing possessing her. It wasn't true masculinity, but it was this pseudo masculinity because she has a poor relationship to masculinity. And you see the same thing with men having anima possession, where like one of the things I've been observing is the way that men will get bitchy with one another and they'll catfight like mean girls, and they're doing it to serve milady, to white knight for milady. That's anima possession. Now, the animus or anima is not actually a thing. It's a thing that's not there. Let's be absolutely clear about this. You do not have a male half and a female half. If you are male, you are male. If you are female, you are female, period. There is no female half of the brain or any crap like that. However, because we are divided into two sexes, our race feels a great gap where the other sex belongs. And so it's this non-entity that during the process of animus or anima possession, it's a non-entity, it's a thing that does not exist, which possesses you. So when you say that Medicare comes from a place of justice, no, justice is Medicare's animus. That there is no justice whatsoever in the personification known as Mr. Medicare. But because there is absolutely no justice, justice winds up personifying and possessing Medicare. I hope that made some sense.
Suppose we can get. Why don't we ask Jim to come on?
Yeah,
I would love to get on with him.
No, let me just tweet at Jim. Davis is calling you a cunt. Do you want to defend yourself?
Jim can only be found in a place where there's scandal. Like, I'm not sure if you want him to be here because, just like the eye of
Beckloff just asked him.
Let's summon the spirit of Medicare.
Listen, what Jim does is absolutely brilliant. Okay, but you need to understand what he is doing. He is, and this is why from the day one, Jim has been very cautious about becoming popular.
Yeah.
Because the moment he becomes popular, he becomes a parody of what he is.
I don't. Can I just ask? This goes back to I think it goes back to Encyclopedia Dramatica. It's if you watch Loghouse, you watch the idea of unwarranted self-importance. That was a good Ed article. If you've not read it, read it. It's the fact that once you become big enough, you get that fucking UID. That's the fucking term. You sort of just
as soon as Medicare starts thinking that he is a personification of justice, he becomes a low cow. He becomes that which he's fighting. The only safe way for him to remain Metokur is for him to have an absolute absence of justice. And then he accidentally personifies it. It has to remain an accident. The moment he tries to do it on purpose, it all falls apart.
Yep. I think it's the moment he does something intentionally, the moment it becomes canon, the myth of Metokur dies.
Exactly.
That's the point. He is he's not justice. As you said, it was sort of the wrong word. I think it's reaction's a better word. It's like quicksand. You react. You push harder against it, and it just it pushes you in more. You just got to be gentle with it.
I love that picture, by the way, the old internet aristocrat. Like, what a fucking pretentious bullshit picture.
Yeah. Well, that was just a placeholder, if I remember correctly.
Oh, it's brilliant, though. It's a brilliant placeholder.
It's a freaking facade.
What was that stream with Sargon and Milo? I think Milo brought out an internet aristocrat wig and said, "This is what I used to jack off to, imagining I was with you."
Well, you know what? I mean, if you're serious about the Metokur jokes, somebody said Metokur Jim is open to like joining streams nowadays. I mean, if you want to, your channel is how many subscribers you got? Like you got 15.
I just messaged him now. I said Davis called you a cunt.
Well, I would
invite streaming with him, but it's not going to be a regular stream.
No,
I'd invite him on for Sunday.
Well, we've well gone past the point of this stream ending, so
maybe he wouldn't come on for Sunday. But I mean, I'd at least invite him on, Aurini, because I'm sure you could pick some guy you want to talk about and like extrapolate on a larger issue. Like I don't know, there's the thing with Sargon trying to start the Liberalist Party, which is one of the most pathetic things I've seen in a long time.
Well,
like, I'm sure you could pick somebody that you wanted to talk about and extrapolate that to a larger point with Jim. But anyways, I don't know. I mean, I do like the guy, but to me, it's always been I just don't know enough about him because it seems I guess I'm kind of inherently distrustful to him because he seems to make everything out to be a joke when I mean I take everything very seriously.
That's perfectly agreeable.
He's operating at that fourth level of rhetoric. You can absolutely 100% trust Jim to make a joke out of everything.
Yeah, he again, Jim's not someone you counter. You just sort of have to either make sure you don't piss him off or you ignore him. Again, it's like when, for example, that Sargon discussion, which I think you had that I think was it last Sunday with NC Clark and I can't remember Luke and maybe someone else. Sargon actually had some points that were agreeable. It's just how he handled Jim. He doesn't seem to understand how to actually win.
Well, and that's my point in talking about this, is that I think understanding what Jim is worthwhile in and of itself because he's fascinating. He's hilarious, he's informative, and it's a fascinating phenomenon.
The metaphysics of Metokur.
Like Gratal, like I'm not arguing with Jim right now, guys.
We're not
studying him.
That's not the point.
Now this beast moves.
Well, no, again, Jim's not unique. He's just Encyclopedia Dramatica. He's just a 4chan mentality. It's if lols can be found, they'll be mined, regardless of whether you like that person or not.
Then we got Space Dog again.
Hey, Dogo.
Yeah, based Alsatian.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else in your agenda? Because I'm probably about to get off.
Yeah,
I imagine
it's a good place to end it, guys. It's about an hour too late. Hopefully, you folks have found it entertaining this whole time. Thank you very much for listening. By the way, God bless all of you.
You had like a solid 80 listeners through the whole thing.
Any last thoughts that don't turn into another 45-minute conversation?
What are you thinking about talking for Sunday? Because I mean, if you want, I'll join you for Sunday.
Dude, same bat time, same bat channel.
All right, sounds like a plan.
Yes, Metokurism. Yeah. I'm going to start a course at the local university studying Metokurism.
Metokurism.
Esoteric Metokurism.
Future employment prospects.
Well, yeah, I mean, shit, maybe we can talk about we can get more deep esoteric metacharism in Sunday's video. But yeah, it was nice talking to all you guys. Nice reading the Spurg chat. I had a good time here.
Luke, you got any final words?
I did an hour ago, but I kind of lost them.
Well,
all right,
maybe
folks,
2
go
hours
do
ago.
something productive with your lives tomorrow. God bless all of you. Thank you for listening. Thank you very much to my Patreon backers. Oh, what's going on? I've got more posts coming up on was it what the nature of war? The freaking On War by Clausewitz. Posts coming up every Monday on that. I hope you're finding them useful. I am. Like I said, I'm reading Gödel Bach, which is, I'm not reviewing it because I'm not smart enough to review it. The other one I can review. This one I'm just trying to absorb. And I can fit in maybe, yeah. Anyway, guys, thank you very much. God bless. Deus Volt. Stay true to yourselves and try and be good to one another. And keep that third eye open, because there's a lot of dark things coming, but there's something there is very much a silver lining. It's a very thin lining, but it's very, very bright. So keep your eyes open for that.
I have some things to say to close up.
Mm-hmm.
There are two forms of spiritual currency in this world: time and attention. And energy flows where the attention goes. Just keep that in mind.
All I had to say was keep on Deus Voltin.
Yep.
Yeah,
And Aurini out, apparently.
your eyes on the objective.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and Jolly ruined it for me. Aurini out, folks.
Oh, sorry.